Sanders taking a shot, got him in! Room service, touchdown! Hunter!
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Scatterboo, again a broken tackle, and he can walk in, touchdown! Third of the first half for Cam Scatterboo.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
So now, obviously again, and Giddens, another huge hole. Giddens midfield and pushed out of bounds into Arizona State territory.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Carson Hansen in the backfield with Rocco back, who's finally going to go deep and got a man wide open. And on the way is Jalen Noel. Touchdown Cyclones on one play.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Fafita looking for T-Mac across the middle. T-Mac, give him another 6.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Tuesday. And, of course, the powwow that's going on up in Dallas with college football playoff commissioners. We'll get into that. We'll look last night's game in Lubbock. Great matchup between Tech and Houston, as Houston has clinched the Big 12 regular season, at least a tie for the championship. So much more to get to, and we will today. We have two different bracketologists on the show. Jerry Palm covers men's basketball. Charlie Cream with the women's basketball with ESPN after, of course, another night. Baylor women with a nice win, 9 straight wins. We'll get into that. Texas is always going to be fine. Whenever they lose a coach, they'll get one back that's as good, if not better. But let's start with this, the Brian Kelly story. This is with Ross Dellinger. Well, Brian Kelly saying that there will be real enforcement when it comes to what they do with Deloitte and whoever oversees NCAA infractions, violations, etc., restricting the school's number of transfers, all of that's going to be handled by somebody, at least they want to, outside of the NCAA. There will be real enforcement. The article's pretty in-depth about it. I don't know until I see it. I still don't know. If that's who you're paying to monitor you, you wonder if there's still going to be conflict of interest. And I bring this up because of this, and you guys then, with your feedback, please. Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina. Today in 1987, SMU was given the death penalty. We do this not every year, but I thought with the tie into the Brian Kelly quotes, today, 1987, SMU was given the death penalty, and you wonder what that penalty would be if that was today.
Everything that they got punished for is legal now. So it would. It's
there wouldn't be a penalty. It's legal.
It's got to be how
they wouldn't have to do it under the table.
This is how
we just got a Miami quarterback who had a freaking Lambo and whatever stolen, and Eric Dickerson had a Mustang or what Trans Am.
Yeah.
So who cares? I mean, it wouldn't have been anything.
This is how bootleggers felt right after Prohibition. I was like, all right, that's great. I think. I'll wait and see on the new enforcement arm. The biggest thing is, the NCAA, which is what really should have made them start looking like a joke, is, okay, we know this transaction happened. We know this transaction happened. We're going to spend 5 years investigating this. Well, the guy who broke the rule is already gone. There's a 50-50 chance in most cases that the coach that broke the rule is already gone, and potentially the athletic director too. So they're like, all right, and maybe the president. So no one who was here when this crime was committed, this violation was committed, but now because of that, you guys don't have a bowl game for the next 2 years, and you've lost this money, and we're fining it, and you're like, well, where's the expediency to punish them? And The thing we saw with Jim Harbaugh, you can move a little quicker on these things when you have the evidence that you need. And they had evidence and they moved on it. And then they, investigated later on to see like how severe it really was. And they made a determination. Now Jim Harbaugh left, so it made it kind of moot for them to go and seek out and punish him. But there were still coaches on that staff. This can be done much faster. And there do need, like, those are penalties like, hey, guess what? You can only have 15 transfer this year. You can only do this. Your 3 years of your revenue sharing is lower. Those are real penalties. Vacating wins is the biggest bullshit penalty ever that doesn't matter. And that was the most consistent thing they could come up with is like,
they shut down the entire program. Oh, Michigan.
Yeah, but like with all these other things, like, after the death penalty, they never wanted to do it again because it was too much. They knew it was too much. They did it. They made an example out of SMU, and then they never did it again. You know why? Because it was too much. It took SMU until a year ago to fully feel recovered from it.
Yeah, it was almost like the grass after the wintertime. It took a long time for it to get through and start to grow. Craig, your thoughts about what it was then? And Chuck Cooperstein will join us. Luka and the Mavericks tonight at the Lakers. But Chuck will join us because he was at that press conference in 1987.
Yeah, I don't have really thoughts on SMU at this point. It's been talked about, for 4 decades. So I wasn't around then, and I've read plenty about it, saw the ESPN 30 for 30 and all of that, and, glad to see SMU finally dug out of that hole. But, that's the past, and that's to just, kind of reflect back on. As far as today goes, they've established, their committees, and they've been setting up all of the quote-unquote guardrails and are putting things in place for this new era of leadership. And so for anybody who's been complaining about the NCAA, they're going to have less on their plate because of the House settlement. There is that benefit to House once that's all finalized, that they've already been putting together the groups that will be the quote-unquote law enforcement arm or dictate what the penalties will be. And so, yeah, if you affect scholarships, I think that does matter to folks. One of the things talked about was the fair market value and how the different ways you could get docked and penalized. And so I think there's real threats you can deliver to try and dissuade teams from cheating. It's also college athletics, especially college football, so there will still be teams that find new ways to do it, a la Michigan. But I do think there needs to be some guardrails. I think, that word's almost become like too buzzy or too taboo that almost people hear it and they check out, but everybody's saying the same word for a reason. Everybody's begging for it, from the richest of the rich to just the casual fan who just wants some of this to calm down, not in terms of the news cycle, but just like, what am I watching? Like, is there penalties for anything, or can anybody just do whatever they want? And for the last 3 years or so, everybody's just pretty much done what they want. You've had an occasional, hey, this coach is poaching or whatever, and nothing ends up happening about it, really. It all just falls into the ether of social media, or people aren't confident enough in anything happening, or they're too afraid of what the backlash might be that they don't actually name names. So if there's somebody who can actually identify names, go after them and make sure that there's actually penalties so that everybody stays on the same page. I think that's what we've been asking for the history of college football, not this selective, no, we're really going to hit Miami hard this time, and we're going to hit this program hard, but you get off the leash because you sued us back, and now there's no penalties coming. And so I think everybody's been confused by what actual enforcement there has been and when it's been applied and when it hasn't, and when lawsuits have stopped them dead in their tracks or just ruled them null and void. So if this can be a bit sharper of an entity that really does keep some things in check, I think that's great. But I'll believe it when I see it, because the NCAA was the schools. So they're basically complaining about themselves.
Yep. And if they're going to hire this group, Deloitte, you hear about them a lot, and with award ceremonies, et cetera. But we'll see what happens. I'll believe it. Like you said, we'll believe it when we see it. But it is interesting that that story came out. That was from Ross Dellinger. A guy never sleeps. And today was the anniversary of SMU in 1987. It's not so much about SMU, but Coop was there. We'll have him on to discuss that a little bit with today's college football. Also today, On3 had a story about tampering. This is not breaking news. Anonymous staffers, collectives, and agents sound off on tampering in college football. Quote, I don't know anybody that doesn't. Group of 5 teams are doing it on shitty group of 5 teams. If you're not tampering, you're putting your program and university at a disadvantage to win games, which pretty much states what Craig said about college football. It has never really changed.
And then they justify the cheating by, well, everybody's cheating.
Yeah.
And then so it just goes in a circle and it never gets broken. And so everybody just cheats. And then if you're not, you're the bad guy somehow. You're the idiot that's going to get fired because you're not cheating. That's how backwards this is. But that's also, part of the entertainment value, I guess, for some over the years. And some of the, the messiness of college football, that's what makes it college football. So I don't think anybody's wanting to, just completely strip those things away. But yeah, everybody's doing it, so we've got to do it too. Or if you don't do it, you get fired. If you don't do the wrong thing, you might get fired. Like, are we backwards? Yeah, I think that we might be. Yeah, that the cheating actually is the wrong thing to not do. So in line with what we were just talking about, if you get found tampering, there's supposed to be repercussions for that. It might be lost scholarships. It might be monetary fines. I don't know if those will be like when they penalize an NBA team or NFL team and it's like $50,000, which, basically the owner pulls out of his dirty sock and hands over, or if it will be something substantial that actually hits these schools and makes them feel it, because that's where you would really get them. Like, fine them, and I know you can't fine them $1 million for, like, tampering, but that's how you would stop it, would be to do things like that. But, some fine of some sort that at least makes them have to cut a check and part with that precious money. I think that would dissuade people as well. So that's part of what's been talked about, being under this police umbrella. And so I'm all for that. And I know it's going to be hard to stop, but I think if you at least give a Jeff Traylor an outlet to go to say, like, here's Pitt or Kansas or somebody, and they're
Texas,
clearly Texas. If they're coming out of, here they are, here's the DMs and whatever. If there's something that can be done about that, I think that would be great. Why would you not want that, by the way, either? Like, I've seen that argument of like, well, it's part of the deal. It's like, yeah, but why would you not want it above board? Oh, I wonder why you wouldn't want it above board. Probably because you benefit from being under board more often than not,
And what they need to do is they need to put the onus on the athletic directors and the head coaches, because a lot of it is, if Smokey's the head coach and you and I are the coordinators, and then even us, we can just keep pushing it down the line of, hey, I don't want to know about it. Like, just have the kid DM me when he's ready, and then, or just let me know. And then I get a call from somebody that's like, hey, the Eagle has landed, and then I'm like, oh, good. Let me contact Trey Moore and see if he wants to come to Texas. I'm using that as an example because, like,
if you get caught cheating in this environment of college sports, you're a freaking idiot.
Well, yeah, yes, but no. My point being is that there's plausible deniability between the head coach and intermediaries right now. You need to make it so that even if there's plausible deniability, they have to set it up to where, like, look. Nobody is tampering. Don't do it, because it's not worth it for us to do this. There are so many avenues for us to get players that are a little bit maybe harder than just going to a kid or his agent. But if anybody gets caught with us tampering or this kid, then we're all getting punished, so it's not worth it. They have to make sure.
To put a bow on this part of it, what should be the penalty? The player who goes from one school to the next, should he not be able to play for that school? Should the coach be fined? Should you lose the scholarship? What would be something that would matter?
I don't know. I haven't spent any time really reflecting on it. I mean, that's for them to figure out. That's their job now. I think, monetarily, only some schools will feel it as much as you intend for it to. I don't know that, fining Texas $500,000 really does much to them. I think they'll move on from that, or Ohio State. I think they'll eat that if that means they get the 4-star wide receiver. So I think you've got to, make it severe enough to where they don't do it again. But I don't know what that would entail. I'm sure, money will be part of it, but I'm not sure what kind of legal grounds you run into when you start to say, oh, well, the player can't play there. Well, then is that a lawsuit now coming your way? Probably. So is that going to – and then the lawsuit's not going to fast track to where it's going to happen in enough time for that guy's last year of eligibility or whatever. So that's where the lawyers who get paid the big money to figure these things out, they can figure that part of it out and how to best avoid further lawsuits, although that's something the NCAA has been terrible at over the years. So maybe this new renamed, revamped wing will be better at that. But, I don't know what legally is possible to be able to even do. But if it's an assistant coach, which clearly they're going to avoid that, like Paul's referring to, there's a middleman. It's Uncle Leo is like the guy who's not technically with Texas Tech, but he's, you can't prove it on his cell phone bill, but he's got a burner probably, and he's the in-between. So I don't know how you stamp all that out.
That's the thing is you need, like, whatever the penalty for getting caught has to be so severe that you go to your staff and say nothing. Like you have to make sure you send it out to the community that says nothing. That's where I get confused is how you're going to do this, because I do believe that coaches love this. They love I didn't know that was going on. Sure, I benefited from it, but they love blissful ignorance.
Yeah, but that doesn't work as much anymore.
No, it doesn't. But they
used to.
But if you're getting paid $12 million a year, for some reason, blissful ignorance still works a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're like, well, I mean, it was, I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm appalled that I've now found out, blah, 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 blah. That was the whole thing with Connor Stallions and I know that's not tampering, but that was the thing that Michigan decided to do, right? And that's kind of the college go-to of like, well, we had no idea that he was doing this. We just thought he was that damn good. You're like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, some kind of savant that you stumbled onto that just happens to have undying love for your university and travels around? No. So with tampering, it would be that too. Is like, look, hey, all of a sudden, the best quarterback in the country just decided he wanted to come here. I'm sorry. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna look a gift horse in the mouth.
You could have a third party. You could have Uncle Leo. You could have an agent or whatever. But at least from the article, it appears they say that they're serious about cracking down. To me, the biggest penalty, giving up a scholarship hurts. The biggest penalty will never be the case now because of how much money that networks have put into these games by saying so-and-so, let's say Tennessee, cannot be on TV anymore. They're not going to do that because that hurts the product, that hurts the conference, and that hurts the TV networks because they want a name like Tennessee to be on television. When you do that, or no bowl games, then you're cutting off part of someone's body part.
I mean, I at least admire that they're moving forward and putting this out there. I think, it's another Ross article, so you assume that some of this is kind of like checking the temperature for the folks in charge and just kind of seeing what the reactions are, much like the playoff proposal a couple weeks ago, and everybody went insane over that, and then that's dead in the water now. Like, they're talking about it, but it's, the conversation came and went, and I don't think this one will spark nearly as much of a conversation because I don't think it's as interesting as the playoff to most people, but it is definitely interesting if you've been following college football long enough and you've seen the inconsistencies and how the NCAA has doled out punishments. You've seen the complete lack of punishments in many cases. You've seen rightful punishments only to get rejected because of lawsuits. You've just seen a lot of just the Wild Wild West thing, which I felt like that got so overused after COVID. Like, we just heard that for so long, and then NIL and all that. And like it was a good phrase to use because that's very much how it felt. But it's like it's time to move on to modern times now. It's time for the game to move on from the Wild Wild West, and we've had our fun. Everybody ran around town with their pistols out, firing them in the air, but it's like now it's time to actually have a little bit of law and order so that if you want to be professional, it's time to act like a professional business. And so I'm all for some ruling, party being in charge of doling this out so long as it's actually on the up and up and not just some enforcement arm in name mostly like the NCAA was. So we'll see where this goes, but there's a lot of interesting details, like in terms of they might find a school $1 million. And you know what? I think even, I kind of said that about Texas or an A&M or whoever. Yeah, they've got a lot of money. Doesn't mean they want to part with $1 million over tampering with a recruit. There's also NIL aspects to this as far as making sure there's not third parties that are going in and inflating what a guy's actually making, as far as going over the cap that has been set, and then there's penalties should you do that, like a loss of scholarships or like even being fined like maybe 3 times the amount of money that they, quote-unquote, I guess, went over said cap. So I think those would be good deterrents, and I'll wait and see how those are actually applied, but I'm glad we're getting somewhere, it feels like, in the midst of all of the uncertainty.
All right, they are meeting in the Dallas and Fort Worth area, in Dallas, the college football commissioners. We'll have Brandon Marcello will join us. He had a story on it, just like Ross did, about what are the possible changes. Remember now that this week's meeting, today's meeting is more about 2025 and trying to make changes to that as much as anything they're talking about in the future for 2026, which would be more teams and the possibility of different type alignment when it comes to automatic qualifiers. What they're meeting for now is try to make decisions on what they decide to do this year, the 2025 season. Everybody has to be on board. Everybody. It has to still be unanimous for anything to change in 2025.
If I were Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips, when they said we would like to redo the seating and not give you any more money for that, I would say go screw.
Well, Gloria Narvaez. I mean, all of them. Yeah,
that's what I would do. I would do all I would just get together and be like, no, we're not doing that. And sometimes, like before this all got done, it was the Pac-2 was being like they were kind of trying to slow it down to ensure their position and use as much power as they could when they had it. And then eventually that ran out of steam. Well, this could actually slow something down. You could actually do something with this. So don't get eliminated from the game with the get out of jail free card in your pocket,
Craig, you brought this up a lot, and I think everybody kind of believes in this, but at the same time, you got to fight for your turf. And then again, it's just a matter of it's an ultimatum. You're not going to get what you want because the Big Ten and the SEC have all the power eventually. It's almost like if you could die today or you could wait a year, what would you do? That's very, I know that's kind of dark, but
I'll take B. I'll wait a year.
Maybe there's a miracle. But what do you honestly think, do you think there'll be changes other than perhaps the seeding? And that might be one that people can give and take on. What do you think might come out of eventually what happens in December and January of 2025 college football playoff?
Well, I mean, they're talking about the seeding right now. Is that not what this is about?
Yeah, they're trying to change this coming
this year,
25. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Are you asking about this year or the year after?
What do you think, if anything, will change with this year's college football playoff setup?
I don't know. They usually get their way, so they'll probably get their way again. They'll somehow bamboozle Brett Yormark and everybody else into believing that they'll have a say at the table, even though they have all the control moving forward in 2026. They just typically seem to get their way. I would have to have some types of insurances in writing if I am the other commissioners to vote on reseeding this year. Like, what assurances do I have next year? Because next year we have no say. Next year we have no say. It's all SEC and Big Ten. They get to do whatever they want to. And so this is the last year we actually have a say that means something that's weighted. I'm keeping it as is if I'm then. Unless there is some give and take behind the scenes, that's politics, that you're insured as the Big 12, that we guarantee you will have this from 2026 and beyond. If you can give me something like every year, I'm getting 2-3 teams in or whatever, and I know that was their proposal, and that's been rejected by some people that feel like there might be those years where you get 3, but I would also say there's probably going to be those years where you get 1. So that's the gamble you're taking. But, I mean, I don't see what reason the others have to go forward with this year, unless you tell me something that's not publicly
Are you giving me some more money? Like, are you going to make up the money that I could potentially lose?
Right.
Are you going to make up the difference?
Right.
No.
I don't see any motivation to do this and to give in to them when you have this last little bit of air that you can breathe without them controlling how much air you get to breathe. So I think they'll probably get their way, like I said, because they just magically seem to. But if I'm everybody else and I'm not working with all the information, I don't see what motivation I have to go ahead and hand over the keys to you to get what you want right away. I don't know, but I think there's missing pieces to this puzzle that we don't have, the ability to know.
There's got to be something else that's on the table that's a negotiable type of, I guess you could say, change that is a benefit to someone other than if you're a team or a conference inside the Big Ten and the SEC. Whatever that might be that they can put out there as a carrot, I don't know. But Big Ten and SEC, in my opinion, no matter how dominant they are with the money and the teams and whatever else, to me, they're not completely arrogant where they know they can just ramrod this thing in for the future. I know I could be completely wrong, and some of you think that I am wrong, but so we'll see. But they're doing all that stuff, and there's still more work to be done. I just wish that when they had these meetings, they'd actually get something done. I hate meetings. I've always hated meetings. If you're going to meet and get a damn decision done and walk out the door.
Well, yeah, they're usually meetings to plan the next meeting is kind of what they're doing. But I will say this. A lot of times when you see situations where you have a lot of false bravado or bravado, like a lot of, SEC and Big Ten, like, pounding their fist and saying, we're this, we're this, we're this. Well, if they didn't need you for something, they would just do it. There's power in what you have. And so a lot of times when you see that in life, just generally, if they could just do something without you, they would do it without you if that's what they wanted. And so clearly the others have some power right now, and they need to use it while they have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could see the seedings change. I mean, I think a lot of people were, on board with that in the future. Obviously, that's going to be the case. But, maybe there's some discussion. Maybe that's one of the things that you can't actually do, although Arizona State benefited greatly from it. So if you're Mark, like, it worked out really well for you. So, again, what motivation do I have to change this thing that worked out really well for us last year and should have worked out better? It's just the Arizona State rally came too late, and that penalty was too costly. Let me know what you've got, but they don't have a lot of leverage, and this is one of the last times they probably will have leverage. So you obviously have to see what all is out there to discuss that could benefit you. So those conversations are ongoing right now. By the way, be very careful of articles you read now, guys. Not to say the information's not correct, but they're like, I noticed on Yahoo, they've got Ross, and there's a lot of articles that are like AI now that are just like, you see the top of it and it's like, hey, this is AI, this is experimental, like, let us know if there's any mistakes. That's on a national website, and it's whatever the name, like Cast something, and I was reading like 2 or 3 articles in a row, and I realized that I saw that warning, and I looked, like the 2-3 articles I had read, which I wasn't paying, they weren't like I was reading Charles Dickens or something, but I was reading through it, they're all AI. I thought I was just reading regular stuff, so it's just just something that kind of jumped out to me earlier today. I was like, whoa, that's going to take some getting used to.
Well, I'm gullible as hell. I've been hit. Who's the one that gets me? Who's the Twitter account that gets me every time? Is it Ian Rappaport? That's the one that I'll get.
I don't know. There's several that seem to.
Yeah, Ian Rappaport
He's the one that gets me because it's at Rap Sheet. And which should be like a criminal log or something like that. But there's one that gets me about once or twice a year. So there we are with that. As far as whatever happens, that's a lot of things chewing up on it. But you're right. If it's not Ross or Brett McMurphy or Brandon Marcello or about 6 or 8 college football writers, I'll even sometimes text them. Not so much, hey, is this your article? But is this what's happening?
It's not like a fake account. It's just that AI is writing the article on their website. It's just weird to see that because it's written as though there's a person behind it that's writing this, just like Ross did or just like Pat Forty did, and instead it's just generated from whatever conversation they had. It's just weird to see that in line with regular authors. And so
Shakespeare was a fraud.
I mean, he wasn't AI.
He wasn't. No. Allen Iverson is who's writing those articles.
Now, there is a school of thought that people think that Shakespeare wasn't actually a real guy. He was just an amalgam of different playwrights, like all together. But, or it was a guy who was actually like a duke, who was his pen name. But it's a pretty good movie.
It's a great name. All right, so I know a lot of you are just constantly thirsty for any kind of realignment or any kind of expansion talk when it comes to college athletics. This was pretty juicy. Mike Krzyzewski and Rick Pitino suggesting a merger between the Big East and the ACC. Commissioner Val Ackerman, with the Big East, said she's open to the idea, but it could require unraveling, yes, here we go, media rights with all those particular networks. This from Front Office Sports.
Hi, ACC graduate here, and someone whose school is actively suing the ACC for more football money. This is a stupid idea because it doesn't help you with football. Now, maybe in the future, basketball, a sport that I also love, can make this kind of money, and merging these conferences might make sense. But for right now, and the way the contracts work, and the contract that they have that is until 2536 AD doesn't help them. And the ACC should not, like, I hate to say this because I love basketball, but doubling down on basketball 20 years ago is why you're in this spot. So don't.
That's true. That's
I mean,
exactly
they broke
right.
apart 30 years ago because of this. So, I don't know how that would be the great coming together. I also don't know what would motivate you if you're Boston College or Syracuse or any of the other schools to suddenly want to welcome in all of these other basketball teams that have very little bearing on football. And I guess you get UConn football, which, there's some people that really pump them up. There's some people that, feel like they're a team that can really benefit from more money and more exposure. We know the Big 12 has kicked the tires on that. Not sure where that is or what, but basketball obviously would be the big pull, and that's what this conversation revolves around. And that's also where the sources are. What does Mike Krzyzewski do, or what did he do? What does Rick Pitino do? They coach basketball or coached basketball. So, their focus is basketball. It's a nice idea, I guess, for basketball, because if you miss the old league, then hey, it was great, and you have all these fond memories, and you want to see Xavier versus, Duke or whatever in some matchups and all of the crossovers that you could have that would be fun for Hoops fans. But, I don't know what this does for you in the big picture that really changes much. And so I know Jim Phillips commented on it, and so did Ackerman about, having the conversations, and they're kicking the tires on lots of ideas. And obviously everybody's worried about the future. But, I don't know, maybe a loose partnership or something that's not completely a merge, because a merger full on, that makes for one big mess. And it certainly doesn't make for a mess that Florida State and Clemson or North Carolina, for that matter, would have any part in having to clean up at various points. So now they just have more, so to speak, dragging them maybe down from making the money that they want to make or dipping into the pot. So, that's a lot of hands in the same cookie jar. So I don't know how that would work, but I'm not surprised they're talking about it, because, guys, every single rumor, it's not valid. There's definitely, I've seen some people just making up stuff and throwing it on stuff. But do I believe the ACC's talked to the Big East about a merger or about what they could possibly do? Yeah, absolutely I do. I think the ACC is probably doing everything it possibly can to check every box it possibly can to figure out if there's some magical route they can take that makes this all better for them moving forward. Just like if you're Brett Yormark, you've talked to UConn, you talked to Gonzaga, you talked to whoever, because you're just trying to find out what works. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but everybody's talking all the time, and a lot of times we don't even hear about it. So I would imagine like they're at least acknowledging it. So they're considering everything, but I don't know. I think there's just a lot of teams you'd have to deal with. I don't know how this would work money-wise.
Big West is going to vote on Friday of this week to extend an official invitation to Cal Baptist in Utah Valley in 2026. Big West officials recently visited both campuses, adding Cal Baptist in Utah Valley, replacing departed members of Hawaii and UC Davis, who are now going to be a part of the Mountain West. Jason Shear had this first yesterday, and then some of the UT writers were right there in the middle of that. And, of course, Jason covers Arizona athletics for Wildcat Authority. Dwayne Aquina, let me tell you something. When Terry Joseph left for the Saints, you're like, whoa, because he's a hell of a coach and a big name. But they don't miss a beat. And Dwayne Aquina is one of their best ever assistant coaches, at least from the Mac Brown era. He knows Texas as much as anybody, so they don't blink. Losing Terry Joseph, good for Terry Joseph. And now Arizona loses Dwayne Aquina. They lost coach last year, defensive coach a year ago. And now you wonder, and UT's pretty loaded pretty much across the board. Is there going to be a player or two that plays at Arizona who might end up playing for Texas at a position they need better depth? But Dwayne Aquina, he's an alpha when it comes to assistant coaches in college football.
Yeah, and, back at Tech, like they're going to get who they want, and he's done a great job.
When they lose somebody, what you have to do is clutch your pearls that if you have somebody with any attachment to them, or that might be worth them paying for, then you got to watch. You got to watch.
They'll go get them
because that's what they can do. Remember, when they lost Tashard Choice. There's a lot of people that started going, oh, my God, what about our running backs coach, et cetera. And they ended up with the coach from West Virginia.
I mean, yeah, it's a good hire. He's obviously very familiar, hadn't been there in quite a while. He's 68 years old, so he's getting towards the tail end of his career, you would imagine, and gets to go back to Austin where he created a lot of great memories, put a lot of guys in the pros, won awards, and had some fantastic units. So, yeah, on paper, it's definitely warm and fuzzy, I think, for a lot of Texas fans who enjoyed watching them in the 2000s and the 2010s. And, you hope that he can rekindle some of that success that he had. Don't see why he wouldn't be able to. So, Sark moves fast and in a hurry, and I think that's one that you cheer. Certainly a loss for Arizona on paper, and they've had some good players in that secondary. So, be interested to see now how you respond, but already a bit of an uphill battle for Brent Brennan to begin with, much less when you're constantly getting picked at, and now you have to, once things finally seem like maybe they're starting to calm down a little bit, now you've got to go replace Dwayne Akina. And it's like, when does it finally stop that you can settle in and start moving forward and put the blinders on? So, yeah, that's an unfortunate late cycle loss for the Wildcats. But I think that's a logical and good pickup for the Longhorns.
All right, one more college football note. NC State, Dave Doran, their head coach, is going to close all 15 of their practices. They have a couple of new coordinators. They're going to close practices, not just the no spring game. They're closing practices. I saw some fans get a little bit frustrated with this that like to have at least that one day when they open it up and there's tailgating, et cetera. Things have changed. So North Carolina State, it's no longer a big deal if somebody says there's no spring game, because that's out there. But closing all 15 practices with the coordinator change makes some sense. You're trying to keep that information from being seen.
It's funny how some coaches and fan bases are used to open practices and do that. I don't think it's a big deal either way. It's whatever you're comfortable with. I was funny when I came here. I moved here. I went to go interview Jason Smith. And it was
Baylor tackle, offensive lineman, number 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah. So I went to go interview Jason Smith, and when I went out to the practice field that was at that time by Floyd Casey, there were like 15, 20 people, just like regular folks just watching. And I asked Nick Jost, who was the SID at the time, I was like, hey, Nick, what's going on over here? He's like, oh, those are just fans. And I was like, man, if you walked by the practice facility and you could see it from a walking bridge. When I was in Tallahassee, They would tell you to keep – you could walk, but they'd tell you to keep moving.
They had snipers.
It was different. So it's all different everywhere. I think, coaches are paranoid by nature, and if this helps them, it helps them. But this is just another step in the direction of these are going away.
I think there's some logic to this decision as well. I think they need to be careful, though, of just exterminating spring football, though. I think there's people like myself who like college sports, but I love college football. And so I don't need it to be a year-round sport necessarily. Like, obviously, it's great for this show that it's become that because we all love it, and that's mostly what we talk about. But it is nice to have a little bit of nibble of something in March and April. While there is March Madness ongoing and baseball's in full swing and softball, whatever else you want to point to, there is that nice little morsel of football that you get there in like March and April that's fun just to kind of tide you over until July and August when guys start reporting and getting into workouts and you start to hear some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. So that selfishly is why I hope they don't just completely make spring football irrelevant. I don't think that's what this is doing, but I think it's taking another step towards making it as locked down and shut tight as it possibly can be outside of now. I mean, what are we barring media next? Because that's about like if you already canceled spring games, basically, now you're not going to have open practices. Not everybody's doing it this way, but they are. So they're one example. I mean, what's next? Are media still going to come and watch, or are they going to come and interview players and the coach on occasion? Are we still going to get that? I hope so, because I think that would be a misstep to not have something to throw out there in the middle of this desert that is only NIL or recruiting. Actual football is still what most people care about. And yes, spring football is not quite what it was because that quarterback that's flashing might transfer in 3 weeks, but it's still a little something to nibble on. So, I'll be interested in how everybody continues to sort of change their and evolve their plans around spring football. But the spring game is definitely something that's getting tossed to the side by quite a few teams, and closed practices, I'm sure, will be the one that we hear about most next. And then beyond that, what kind of coverage does it get?
A couple of basketball notes. Last night, Texas Tech hosted Houston. Hell of a game. I mean, at one point, I almost put out there, but I said, no, I'm just going to enjoy this. It was one of the most beautiful, ugly games you could ever watch, or maybe one of the ugliest, most beautiful games you could watch, because both teams fight, scratch, and claw. McMillan and Williams did not play for Texas Tech. Houston wins the game. They split the season series. They clinch at least a tie for the Big 12 title. Back-to-back years, their first 2 years in the conference. It was something. I'm telling you, these guys, they put all of it on the line. And McCaslin and Kelvin Sampson both coached the hell out of a game. So there we are with that. Big win for Houston. They really, really played well. L.J. Cryer did not have a big game, but Juwan Roberts, who I don't know what it is about anybody left-handed. Craig is left-handed. When it comes to golf or basketball or for anything, it just looks different, man. And it is different because of the percentages who are left-handed, but it's so smooth. Great game.
It's so smooth that you got people had to back in the day create like, left-handed people are different and they have mental differences, and so you're just jealous of
Dude, I had a teacher make me change how I wrote from left-handed to right-handed because she said it was because of the devil.
Yeah, there's real
stupid stuff.
Yeah, there's real actual real deal biases.
Oglesby is so developed.
Dude, I'm telling
Brother,
you.
it's not just Oglesby. It's like in the
What's
world. Like there's people that really you would be look it up. There's people that really think there's like something wrong with people who are left-handed to the point of like forcing them to. They think it's like there's something wrong with them, not just like a ha ha ha, but like really like you're weird. You're left-handed in certain societies.
I never heard that.
No, look,
I'm telling you.
You and Garrett are weird because you're weird, not because you're left-handed.
Yeah, don't blame it on that.
Like, just don't. But no, that's such a dumb thing. I think with Juwan Roberts and guys like him, because you're not used to a left-handed shooter that's that gifted and big and powerful, I think it gets guys crossed up. Because guys can go to the left hand really well, but he's primarily a left-hander.
Yeah, no.
There's guys who can go and use the left hand.
Yeah.
As a secondary thing, but as a primary lefty, it's different. Randy Johnson was not just scary because he was 6'10" and threw that hard. There have been other guys who are that big right-handed. You're used to seeing it from that angle a little bit more.
Yeah.
But when you see it from the left-hander and you're a left-hander, you're like, is that thing coming at my brain?
Why is it harder? Why does it look to be more difficult, lefty against lefty in baseball, than it is righty against righty?
Because you don't see it as often.
Because you don't see it very often. Here's a stat.
Because of the devil.
Retired stockbroker sent this to me in a text. There was a graphic on the screen during the game. Most wins since 2018. Houston has 204. Gonzaga, 202. Duke, and then Kansas. And he asked me, what relevance is this? Well, that means that you're consistent. That means you're winning year after year after year, usually 25 games or so. In the end, you don't see UConn on that list among the top four or others who have won a national title. Kansas did, and Houston might, and who knows about Duke or Gonzaga. But he asked me about that. It's just a graphic for most wins. Scott Drew loves to go to the data of teams and conferences and all that over a certain amount of time when they have been ranked or they have won 25 or so games and been in the tournament.
I think it's a way to highlight Houston and how good they've been and how consistent they've been, that they've won more games in that stretch than anybody. And I can be kind of arbitrary to pluck a certain, what feels like maybe a random date, but that's what propped Houston up and made them look good for that particular graphic to get the point across. So I think that was just doing your job as a broadcast to highlight how good Houston's been. Since that's who you were focusing on, and I'll put this. I know we got a break, but I mean, pull up. You can pull up a whole Wikipedia page biased against left-handed people and read about how there's forced use of the right hand in many Asian countries due to cultural perceptions of bad luck for being left-handed.
I wish I was left-handed.
There's Malawians said the left hand is less skilled and less powerful than the right, and that's why they force left-handers to convert. There's a lot of history of that. Y'all think it's a joke, but there's legit. That's why there's no left-handed scissors anywhere.
Had never heard of that in my life. Yeah.
Look, Garrett. I think you have, if I'm ever in charge of the Department of Education, which clearly I could be, because, again, but if I ever am, I'm going to come up with a test for teachers to get their certification. And one of the questions is, do you think left-handed people are possessed by the devil? Yes. And if you answer yes, you do not get your teaching license.
Here's some responses in the chat room on left-handed, by the way. Who was it? Chris Visser had a good note about Juwan Roberts. He's actually right-handed. He broke his right arm severely as a kid, learned to play with his left hand. He writes and eats right-handed.
Yeah,
that's a good note.
Yeah, and then there's some people that just hit left, but they're right-handed. Not just regular switch hitters, but like they're primarily left-handed hitters and so on. Like, yeah, there's a lot of unique kind of examples of using it here and there. Like, I do everything left-handed. That's like sports or whatever, with two exceptions. I shoot pool right-handed for some reason, and I also throw a frisbee right-handed. I know that's random, but those are like the two things that I do right-handed. Everything else, like throwing, I guess whatever it may be, punching, whatever is all left-handed. But those two things, frisbee and pool, are right-handed.
He's punching people. He's evil.
Well, according to Garrett's teacher, that's just Jesus trying to come out in those activities.
That's exactly right. I just think it's always been cool. Guys I've played golf with who are left-handed, I've always enjoyed their swing. It just looks smoother. When we come back, we continue our run. We got a lot of guests today. Chuck Cooperstein's our first just after 4. Charlie Cream and also Jerry Palm, Bracketology for women's and men's basketball. John McClain, too. But Kansas State and their 2025 football schedule. We'll look at that, look at the various sections of it. That's next. This, and we appreciate your time, is 365 Sports.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
It's Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $15,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995, or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry to Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
If you want quality and personalized service for all your air conditioning and heating needs, on-call tradesman services. They're a family-owned and operated company that has served Texans for over 30 years. Tradesman offers maintenance plans starting at just $12 per month and a free service call for all new customers. They're also experts in geothermal design, installation, and service. Visit them online at coolingwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
All right, we have 16 teams in the Big 12. We have gone through a nice chunk of them. Still a long way to go. We started this a week and a half ago. And today, on the clock, Kansas State, the Wildcats, and Chris Kleiman. Of course, we've had their AD on, Gene Taylor, yesterday. If you missed that specific segment, it is up. And Craig Smoak, take it away.
Yeah, here's Kansas State, and we'll just get straight to it because we don't have a ton of time to break this down the way maybe we have some others. But obviously a somewhat disappointing season last year. Thought that you would contend for the Big 12, didn't end up playing for it. A couple games got away from you late, like the Houston game. That was a shocker that you certainly weren't anticipating. But you lost to Arizona State, you lost to BYU, lost to Iowa State. You lost to 3 of the best teams in the league, and then Houston jumped up and got you. Now, we'll have the full breakdown again, as always, later on spring and summertime. We get closer and rosters settle down and all of that. But you're coming off of 9 wins, so I think with Avery Johnson back and Chris Kleiman, and yes, there's been more change in the assistant coaching staff, you still feel like you're a 9-10 competing for the Big 12 type of team. But it does feel like last year was a bit of a dip, right, guys? I mean, would you feel like it was a little bit of a disappointment?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the expectations were sky high.
So you're coming in where you're looking to go upward here in 2025, and so it will be, right out of the gates, as we talked about, I think it was just a couple of days ago, Iowa State in Ireland, the Aer Lingus game, the first game of the college football season, and a Big 12 conference game. So I just want to hammer that home for anybody that asks, are you getting that conversation? Is that a conference game? Yes, it is a conference game. It will count towards the standings. But Iowa State and Ireland to kick things off, and as a result of that game, Kansas State will also have 3 bye weeks. So I think they're the third team, obviously Iowa State, then Kansas just yesterday, that all have 3 bye weeks this year. Mm-hmm. So they will play in Ireland. No bye week right after that. Instead, they will play North Dakota when they return home to Manhattan. And then the following week, to close out the non-conference schedule, it will be Army. As they get fortunate that Bryson Daly's moved on. They don't have to worry about him as he goes to serve his country and whatever else may come with his post-college life. But Iowa State, North Dakota, Army will be that first 3-week stretch. Then you turn around on September the 13th, and you will play at Arizona to continue Big 12 play, I guess you would say. But, so there's Arizona, and that will be a road game. Iowa State, North Dakota, Army, Arizona, that first month of the season. So that is pretty busy stuff right there for the Wildcats.
Yeah, it is. But, I mean, that Iowa State game right off the bat's tough.
I should say Arizona, that will be the other part of the scheduling, I believe. So that will not count as the Big 12. That would be that third non-conference game. So I just want to point that out.
But I think you've got a real chance of 3-1 or 4-0 right out of the gate. I really do. I think that you've got some matchups that are going to be in your favor, clearly. Army, though, even though Bryson Daly's gone, that's always a tough one to prepare for because you're going to play 11 other teams. None of the rest of them run that offense. Mm-hmm. So everything changes. I'd rather have my bye week before Army so that I can take that time to, install all the practice nonsense. I say nonsense, but that's what it probably feels like to a lot of coaches is we have to practice differently for these 3 days. And you only have 3 days of contact practice, 3 days to figure this out.
They will install during the summer.
Yeah.
And probably on a handful of occasions, even in August, even though they open with Iowa State, they will have practices or segments about the triple option.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think so. So that's pretty interesting first month of the season, man. Ireland and Iowa State in a conference game, North Dakota at home, Army at home, and then Arizona in a non-con game on the road. So that's technically your second road trip, and because of that Ireland game, you are looking at a 6-6 type of schedule as far as the home and away go for you this year for Kansas State. So no 8-4 like some have been able to put together, or even a 7-5. You're going straight 6-6. So then you get your first bye week of 3. You'll come back on September the 27th, and you are home against UCF and Scott Frost. So Wildcats and UCF turn around, head to Waco, take on Baylor, back home against TCU, and then your next bye week, your second bye week here. So UCF at home, Baylor on the road, TCU at home. What you get as far as the second swing of the 2025 schedule there.
I'm not going to we're not allowed to discuss the team out of Orlando. Can't mention them until we get Scott Frost on the show.
Okay.
All right.
You hear me?
Okay.
Sure.
I stopped saying the long version of BYU. I ended that. We are not going to mention UCF until we get Scott Frost on the show. I mean, we will when it comes to breaking down.
Yeah, I think we got to mention him somewhere.
I mean, yeah. But
you're going to call like you're speaking about him like Voldemort, like they should not be named.
Listen, with my connection and the historic part of my tradition of Nebraska football, we couldn't get him on when he was there.
Yeah.
He's kind of
I don't think we can do that because we'll never talk about UCF again. So it's a nice idea,
do you
though.
think you feel like he maybe wants to keep a little
we
distance
had Gus
from
Malzahn.
you?
Yeah, no, I think he's worried. No, but to get to because we have Scott Fry. I love to talk to him. I really want to get him on. I think it's a great hire for UCF. I hope it is for them, but we're going to have.
I mean, look, it's so hard to say anything about UCF. Like, I've kind of picked them to lose every game we've talked about.
Yeah,
like, if you think about it in
well,
your head.
Let's get to Kansas State.
Yeah, we can talk about UCF.
But I mean, but to this point, I continue to do that. This is though, like after UCF, this is where it starts to get hard for Kansas State. Like they have a great shot at being 5-0, and then they hit the really hard part right here in the middle.
Yeah, they didn't play Baylor last year, so that game in Waco, the last time we saw them, they beat the ever-loving dog mess out of Baylor in Waco. So I don't know that it'll carry over 2 years later, but I remember it very well. I remember that being a rock bottom for Dave Aranda. But yeah, that's when they will return, and then TCU. So then the break, then they come back, Sunflower Showdown. They get full 2 weeks to prepare for hated rival Kansas, and that will be in Lawrence. Then turn around and play Texas Tech at home. So they get the Red Raiders in what could be at that point like a Big 12 championship type matchup. And then another break. So they come back in just the 2 games at Kansas and then Texas Tech. So you can really focus a lot of resources in those couple of weeks that you have to prepare on just those 2 games, really. And then you get that last break, and it's your final 3-game stretch. You'll go to Stillwater on November the 15th. And all these games are Saturdays, every single one. You will play on Saturday every single week if you're a K-State fan. But at Stillwater to take on the Pokes, then to Utah. So back-to-back road games. The only time that happens at all in the schedule is in that final 3-week stretch when you go to Stillwater and then Salt Lake City. And then you're back home on Saturday, November the 29th to take on Colorado and Deion Sanders. Yeah, there is the schedule. 3 bye weeks. Full split between home and away. Only 1 week where you go back-to-back road games. And you do start off with that game in Ireland and then back-to-back home games for the only time on that schedule. So it's one on paper where it looks a little tough. I mean, there's definitely, I think a lot will depend on how that first month goes of sort of where you feel. But I do think that you feel like you can be 4-0. The only game that really probably comes into question is that very first game against Iowa State. But who knows? Maybe Army catches you, or you have trouble dealing with that. I think though that's a nice little non-conference, and you add Arizona as a non-con team as well because of the Pac-12 dissolving. So that'll be over after this year. But there you go. There's the schedule. 3 bye weeks, and you miss out on playing. Let's see, just off the top of my head.
West Virginia.
You don't play West Virginia. You will not play
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. You do play all
BYU.
of you don't play Houston as well, but you do miss BYU. That's probably the most notable. You do play 3 of the 4 Texas teams, though. And you don't play
Arizona State.
So that's another team. So Arizona State, BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, the teams they will not see in league play, but and maybe I'm missing one as well.
And West Virginia.
And West Virginia.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you get Tech, you get TCU, you get Baylor, and then I think a lot of these other ones you really don't quite know. And they might not even be quite what we expect, but the others you certainly don't feel confident enough putting them on a platform without seeing a lot more, whereas those others, you're taking over what happened last year, and a lot of that is carrying over, unlike a Colorado with all that they lose.
Well,
Baylor brings a lot back. TCU brings a lot back.
By the time you play Colorado, they could be a completely, veteran-laden experienced team, too.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's a schedule that you could definitely see them winning 10 games or so and getting into the Big 12 championship. But there you go. There's the K-State schedule.
A lot on the table that opening game in Dublin. The 2 teams that feel like they should be playing, if not winning a Big 12 title, they open up in August. And then from that point on, you'll see what happens the rest of the way. Garrett, you want to break here? Let's break here. Chuck Cooperstein. So Kansas State is now off the table. We'll have another team tomorrow. We'll do that and much more. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor alumni fan engagement, Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe. You have basketball tournaments, Big 12 tournaments, both in Kansas City coming up. And they will be there in force to have different events, dinners, luncheons, pep rallies, etc., when Baylor's playing in Kansas City in both the men's and women's tournament. Paul Thorpe and Doug Furch will be there. They'll have a setup inside the team hotel. If you want more information about it, go to Baylor.edu and in the search bar, look for fan engagement, the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Every year on February 25th in my calendar, my email calendar, it says 1987 SMU death penalty. Chuck Cooperstein, Mickey Spagnola, Dale Hansen. We've heard their history of that before. We've talked to Chuck about it before. We'll have him on also to discuss the Lakers, Mavericks, and Luka tonight. Chuck joins us on 365 Sports. Chuck, everything that SMU did in 1987 that got them the death penalty, and there was a lot, would any of that get them in trouble today?
No, sir. It's amazing how the world has changed in, 38 years, right? It's amazing. But things just happen, and I guess ultimately they happen for a reason, and maybe they don't happen as quickly as we all want them to happen. But we all knew what was going on at SMU, just as if we knew everything that was going on at pretty much every Southwest Conference school at the time. But they were just so brazen about it, more brazen than anyone else over a longer period of time. And the fact that they were a small private school as opposed to the big state U definitely worked against them. And it took them however many years. I mean, really until the last 5 years, I would imagine. Really until when Sonny Dykes got there and they actually started winning some games. They had done it a little bit with June Jones, but certainly nothing of any great significance. They weren't competing for anything that really mattered. But Sonny got them to got better players, and they embraced Dallas, or at least attempted to embrace a larger area of Dallas as opposed to just the University Park bubble. And then the move to the ACC last year really changed everything, and the fact that they could succeed as quickly as they did in the ACC has totally changed everything now, and it's really nice to see, because that was an incredibly dark time, not just in 1987, but really for probably the 20 years afterward, until June Jones got there and they actually started looking somewhat representative.
Chuck, how long after they imposed the death penalty do you think the NCAA felt it was overkill? Because I'm assuming that they thought that, it'll be 10 years, but it won't be almost 40 before they do something of note to the level that they were before this.
Well, look, there were any number of Southeastern Conference programs that were doing some pretty bad things in the era of you being penalized for doing bad things that never got to the level of where SMU got to, or frankly a lot of where TCU got to in 1985, or a whole bunch of the other Southwest Conference schools. So they may have realized even as early as a decade afterward that it was way too much, and that they would never impose that type of penalty again. Because I think they also realized that there were partners at play here, that if you shut a program down for 2 years, how do the rest of the teams and schools in that conference, they have to adjust everything about what they're doing. And it just became something that was, it became way too big. And now, in the era of the super conference, there's no way that you'd ever see anything like that.
Chuck, one more thing from me on SMU, because we have had you on before about this, but I just thought that when that popped up today, plus the Luka thing tonight, but you were in that room, right, the press conference?
I was.
What was that like? I know that the NCAA, the president, or he fainted or whatever. What was that? What was that like? How do you describe that feeling?
Well, first things first. Even before the NCAA people hit the stage, and David Burst, who was the director of enforcement, is the one who fainted, and who was ultimately treated by the mother of SMU offensive tackle Matt McCartan, who later transferred to Penn State. But the before they even hit the stage is when they put the printed reports on a side table, and everybody scrambled to get one of those reports. And of course, you're trying to read through it as fast as you can, and it's in NCAA legalese, so it's not in normal American English for us to figure out super fast. The first thing you saw was the elimination of play in 1987. And then what followed was they will be limited to no more than 7 games, and all of them road games in 1988. And you're reading that, and it doesn't make sense. And then it does kind of ultimately get to you that, wait a minute, they're shutting this thing down for 2 years because there's no way that SMU would ever play and not be able to gain any type of revenue from not playing football games at home. So they just decided to shut it all down. And I think the NCAA was looking for them to do exactly that. So that was an incredibly surreal scene. And then, just David Burst and William Stallcup, who was the interim president of the university at the time. And I believe Bob Hitch was on the stage there. I don't think he had resigned yet as the SMU athletic director. And it was just, I don't know, maybe as surreal as one I'm about to watch tonight here in Los Angeles. I mean, it was the craziest scene you could possibly imagine. And everybody being questioned about, again, what did Governor Clements know and when did he know it? And it was something that became so much bigger than just the football and the shutting down of the program itself.
There really are some parallels. Who knew what and when and how did it happen and all of that to the game tonight, Luka and the Lakers, which, Chuck, I'm one of those long-time Mavs fans that just felt like I had my heart ripped out. I mean, you know all too well. You've heard from people and by all means share your side of things as well when the news first hit a couple of weeks ago. But just kind of what are the feelings around tonight? What's the anticipation level on your end? And kind of how are you unpacking this and preparing for what's going to be a regular season game that a lot of people have eyes on tonight?
It'll be a regular season game unlike any other that I've done in 20 years. I know that.
Oh. Yeah.
It was surreal yesterday, starting to do the work for the game and, doing the Lakers stuff and putting Luka's name on the Lakers side of the ledger. That was just way too crazy. That there's a ton of media here. It's not quite like, it's a playoff game level intensity, I think, but not necessarily like a finals level intensity. That I think you will get when the game is played in Dallas on April the 9th. I think that's going to be the wildest scene that we've ever seen in a regular season game. I mean, even, depending on, what the game means to teams. I mean, there have been big games like that through the years, but there's going to be nothing that has the storyline of, Luka's return to Dallas. But tonight is fascinating because, I mean, the Mavericks have really been playing pretty well, played a bad game on Sunday, and I think they're going to play pretty well tonight. I would expect them to play well tonight. They've really dug down deep to give themselves a chance while they're just going through hell without any big men available to play. But at the same time, I've watched Luka Doncic play for 6.5 years, and I know Luka loves the spotlight. He loves the challenge. He loves dealing with perceived slights, and I think all of that is in play tonight. And I'm just incredibly fascinated to see, how that's going to play out.
Chuck, for you as the play-by-play announcer for the last several years, when you say Luka for 3 or what a shot by Luka or Doncic, whatever, how you call him comes out of your mouth, there's a dopamine hit that clearly goes with it. How will that be different now that it's the opposite side?
A really good question. And I don't think I will be as excited unless it's some type of absolutely crazy shot, which would deserve a rise in voice. The crowd, because he's playing at home tonight, is going to pretty much carry anything that I would say. So I don't know that I necessarily have to oversell it because he's now the visiting player. But if he does something that's otherworldly, some type of ridiculous 75-foot pass like he had the other night to LeBron for the layup, I'll probably get worked up over that because I love great basketball. Whatever is great basketball, I'm willing to thrill to, regardless of who's doing it.
I think that we all have those moments in life. Like I know for my parents, like, where you were when JFK was shot, where you were when 9/11. I think a lot of people from a sports perspective will have that. Where were you when you found out about Luka Doncic being traded? Is your jaw still somewhat on the floor, or how long did it take for you to pick up your jaw? You're a professional. You got to move on, of course, and cover this team as is, but can you kind of just take us into your perspective when all of that went down a couple weeks ago and just moving on from that now these past couple of weeks?
It was stunning, and it's still stunning. The thought of watching him tonight wearing, I don't know I haven't checked locker vision tonight, so I don't know what the uniform colors are tonight, but the idea of him wearing a Laker jersey is just, or for that matter, anyone else's jersey. I mean, it so happens it's the Lakers. But the thought of him wearing anyone else's jersey in light of what we just experienced with Dirk, over 21 years, and what clearly Luka wanted to emulate in following Dirk, is something that is, I think, for a lot of people, and in many ways for me, it's still really, really hard to wrap your arms around. But it is here, and we have played a couple of weeks of games where he has not been, with the team, even though he has not been playing since Christmas, and you knew he was still a part of the team. Well, now you're dealing with the fact that he's definitely not part of the team, and these guys are, they are the Mavericks, and they're the team that I broadcast, and they're the team that I'm going to, do the best to tell their story, and whatever that story is. That's what my job is. And part of that tonight is they're dealing with something that I'm sure from a playing standpoint, they never dreamed that they'd have to deal with.
Chuck, obviously tonight, late tip, 9 o'clock, and it'll be interesting to kind of see what happens. I don't know how many home games they have played Dallas at home since the trade, because there was the All-Star break involved in that too, but what's it been like inside the AAC? Has it been kind of like a funeral home? What's it been like?
No, I wouldn't say it's a funeral home because the Mavericks have actually played pretty good at home. Since the trade, they played 5 games at home. They won 4 of them. And the only game they lost was a game in overtime to Sacramento where DeMar DeRozan hit a great shot with 3 seconds to go, to win the game after he had tied the game at the end of regulation. They played really well at home, and I think the fans are supportive of the players. They know the players had nothing to do with this.
Right.
And so they're willing to get behind those players who are on the floor and playing as hard as they can possibly play. And it is a credit to those players, and it's a credit to the coaching staff that, given all the craziness that's around them, that they have been able to focus in on the job at hand and play as well as they have, to where, they're in a position where they can, finish in the top 6 and not have to play in the play-in. So, but from the arena itself, I think it's not quite as crazy. I don't think there were quite as many people actually in the building as there might have been prior to the trade. But the building was still loud, and the building, the fans were behind the players. And the fans saw, really entertaining basketball games. So, as long as their minds are kept in the present and aren't allowed to roam and think because, this game is bad. There's, what else can we do? And then, it could possibly get ugly from there. The games have been really good. So I think it's been much easier for them to keep their attention on what's actually happening in front of them as opposed to what has gone on.
Hey, man, thank you. I know it's a busy day. Appreciate your time and also the reflection back on this day in 1987 and being inside that room. Thank you for your time, Chuck, and have a great broadcast. I know you will.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavericks. And, Luka, Lakers, Mavericks. I'm not a big – it's not that there aren't times when I might find myself watching something. I didn't watch anything with the NBA All-Star Weekend. It just didn't. It's not a negative to them. I just didn't. I would watch if the Mavericks and Luka were playing somebody, and I would catch a quarter or so. But I'm going to watch tonight. I'm going to have it on. I don't know how long I'll be, because it's a 9 o'clock tip, so it's a late night. But I will be watching that. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah,
what about you?
Yeah, I'll hate watch it. Part of me wants them to drop like 50, and then again, I hate the Lakers. So I'm damned if you do, damned if you don't, and I'm sticking to it. I'm not supporting the Mavericks. I just, I say what I say, and I mean it when I say it. So, I want Luka to have a long, successful career. I hate that it'll happen in purple and gold, but it's not his fault. Not his fault. So they did what they did, and it's time to move on, and this will be a big step in doing so, although it might make it even harder if he goes and does drop like a 50 burger on his old team, and that's just going to rip the still very much forming scab off for Mavericks fans. Or maybe he's the guy who at times, as he's been getting healthier and has been, maybe a little bit mopey because he clearly did not ask for this, no matter how much they try to paint him as the bad guy. He clearly was not the one demanding this or pushing this. Mm-hmm. And so he's had some moments throughout his Lakers tenure so far where you go like, man, he looks unhappy. He does not look like the confident Luka. And then he's had moments where you're like, oh, there he is. And I think tonight you're going to get that dude who is the last person you want to piss off before you have to go play them on a basketball court. He's that type of guy. Like, the last thing you want to do is give him motivation, and you gave him the greatest motivation he'll ever have in his entire career. So, yeah, I don't know what to expect other than everybody at their best, because the Mavs don't want to get embarrassed. Luka wants to probably prove a point. The Lakers want to do him well. And, yeah, it's going to be a regular season game like if Chuck's saying that, a regular season game unlike any that he's done. And he's done how many? Hundreds if not thousands of games at this point, definitely, or hundreds probably, yeah. Then that tells you that this is definitely something unique and hopefully from a Mavericks standpoint, something you never see again.
82 games a year for how long? So thousands.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how long he's been the voice of the Mavs off the top of my head, but, yeah, definitely up there. He's seen a lot, and he's seen championships, and so he's like us, I think, going into tonight with a fascination and also from a Mavericks standpoint, just a little apprehension about the emotions that are going to be dug up. I mean, it's just basketball at the end of the day. It's not life or death, but that was as personal of a shot as a franchise could take against their fan base. And so it still hurts, and, tonight will be a step in moving along. But which direction, I think, remains to be seen.
All right, Chuck, thanks for your time. Chuck Cooperstein, Mavericks, Lakers tonight. Luka and the Lakers against the Mavericks coming up next. A hell of a win last night for Nikki Collin and the Baylor women's team on a roll, 9 straight wins. They play Sunday at home to try to clinch a Big 12 Conference regular season title. And now, what about the conference itself with TCU and K-State, Baylor, among others? When it comes to the NCAA tournament, we have 2 bracketologists this week. Today. We'll have Charlie Cream next on the women's tournament, and then Jerry Palm in the 5 o'clock hour. And this is 365 Sports. Don Shumidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills, and in between Valley Mills and Richland Drive in Waco. Went by there over the weekend and got myself the latest packet of CBD, Vita Dreams, gummies. And I take maybe a couple a night. There was a time, of course, when maybe I was uncomfortable, wasn't feeling very well because I couldn't sleep, my shoulder was bothering me, or anything like that, where I might nibble on another half of one. But I'm telling you, it works for me. And I don't know if it'll work for you, but if you have problems getting to sleep, if you toss and turn, and a lot of times that's just in your head. It might be you have a lot in your mind, personal, professional, financial, health, whatever. But Vita Dreams works for me. And I had a couple of really, like the last couple of nights, I've slept very, very well. If you need a little assist to get yourself some better sleep, Vita Dreams can help you do that. Think about this when the alarm goes off in the morning. Most of us don't just jump out of bed. Maybe you do. But a lot of times, man, you want to hit the snooze button. You want an extra 30 minutes or 10 minutes of sleep, and that can help you out with that with Vita Dreams. 48-foot walk-in humidor, the best brands of cigars in the world. Tell Joshua, Cheyenne, I sent you. Don Shumidor and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center in Waco.
Alan Samuels House of Travel is a full-service travel agency with highly experienced travel consultants plus support staff with over a combined 150 years in the travel business. They are ready to take care of any travel situation for you, your family, and your business, and with the kind of knowledge to complete a seamless itinerary trip start to finish. They will search for the best deal to accommodate your budget from air to cars, ship to shore, hotel, and even meeting space. Name a destination and they've been there. They know the places to go, and international and missionary travel is one of their unique specialties. Alan Samuels House of Travel, celebrating 50 years in business. Call Connie, Sherry, Linda, or Bambi at 254-776-2560 or find them on Facebook or at houseoftravelwaco.com. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Charlie Cream, Bracketology, ESPN Women's Basketball, joins us on 365 Sports. We appreciate Charlie. He's been with us many times in the past. And Charlie, let me ask you this. Is this the deepest field? I'm not talking 1 through 12 or whatever, but are there more teams this year in women's basketball you think that can win a national title than perhaps recent memory?
Absolutely. I think we're looking at one of the more wide open years. Now, it's not wide open in the sense that anybody can win it, but if you're talking about 6 or 7 teams, whereas in years past, for instance, last year, we'll take South Carolina. I think if the idea was, hey, if you're going to bet on this, are you going to take South Carolina or the field? Well, now there's not that singular team that you would put up against the field because there's, as I said, 6 or 7 of them. So from that standpoint, absolutely. It's going to make, I think, the regionals and then, of course, getting to the Final Four just great because it's a flip of the coin with some of these teams. A lot of them already played each other and beaten one another. Mm-hmm. And then the next time out, the team who lost beat another team. And it's been going on now for a couple of months, and I think it's going to all culminate in March with a great last couple of weeks of the season.
Charlie, Texas, the number 1 team in the country, not quite unanimous, but made that shift here recently. And, man, what a job Vic Schaefer has done. What has stood out to you most about the Longhorns, and why are they a team that this year looks like one of those safe bets to perhaps raise the trophy at the end?
Well, I tell you, it's Vic Schaefer. Going back to his days as an assistant coach at Texas A&M, it's defense, toughness. He knows how to coach that. And I recall the Final Four that they were in remember the year that they beat UConn on the last second shot.
Yep.
He coached that game. He coached every possession like it was the last possession he was ever going to watch on a basketball court. He was so into it. He was the puppet master with his players. He was putting them places on the court just by the sheer tenacity of his voice, and he did that for 40 minutes, and it worked. And that intensity flows over to his teams. It's now flows over to his teams in Austin. The one concern I do have about Texas, they're an interesting model, I think, for this, and who we're gonna see cut down the nets at the end, is that kind of defense obviously can win, because even the best of teams, they are able to shut down or at least control. However, offensively for them, if they can't get the ball inside, they're kind of stuck. They don't shoot the three. They don't shoot it a lot, and when they do, they don't shoot it particularly well. And in this day and age of college basketball, I think you generally have to make a few of them. Now, maybe it's only going to need to be a few of them for them to win, but they're a team, definitely, you bring them up first, because they are definitely a team to watch, and they've got two very distinct characteristics. One that says, yes, pick them to win the national championship, and another one that says, maybe be a little afraid to pick them.
Well, you know, what he did at A&M with Gary Blair on that team that won the national title, beat Baylor and Brittany Griner in the regional final, and then what he did at Mississippi State as the head coach on that team, that run they made was special, no doubt about it. There's a lot of teams, Notre Dame, UConn, South Carolina, Juju Watkins at USC, among UCLA. But I want to get to the Big 12, and then we'll go back to those teams that are at the very top of the rankings. Baylor has now won 9 straight with Nikki Collin. They've really kind of been on a heater. They won at Kansas State last night, but they're not a very high seed. How high of a seed can they possibly get if they beat TCU this weekend?
Well, I have them as a 5 right now. And I think with a win over TCU, and then essentially that means they're going to win the Big 12 outright, or they will have won the Big 12 outright. That says something, certainly. I think they can get to a 4. I'm not sure they can get higher than that. And it's gonna come down to a lot of the committee members' viewpoints on how you're playing currently versus your whole body of work. There different people on that committee look at things maybe a little bit differently. And Baylor's entire body of work, the beginning part of the season, non-conference, wasn't nearly as impressive as it is now. So I think it's going to come down to those conversations if they can get any higher than a 4. But right now, I would say, based on what I know and what I sense from the committee and kind of historically, I think 4 may ultimately be the ceiling. But that also means hosting games in Waco, so that's a huge boost. But getting to a 3 could be really important as we start to really get granular and break it down. Because if you're a 4, you're definitely playing one of the teams you just mentioned in the regional semifinals. If you're a 2, or if you're a 3 rather, then you're playing a 2, and it might be a 2 that's not among the teams that you just listed, and that might open the door for another win, another round, and another opportunity to go to the Final Four.
Charlie, is there a team in the Big 12 that you think has a shot to cut the nets? I mean, the highest ranked is TCU there at 8. You've got a K-State. You've got a West Virginia, a Baylor, an Oklahoma State. Just kind of, I guess, in general, what are your thoughts on the league at this point in the year? And are there any contenders, or I guess who jumps out to you as far as making noise here moving forward?
Well, it's not going to be I'm not going to exactly split the atom here when I say that TCU and Baylor would be my 2 teams that I would put at the forefront of having a chance to make a run. And right now they are the 2 best teams in the league, which makes the game coming up very exciting. I think we saw from Kansas State last night that they're either running out of gas, because that's a really good defensive team that didn't play particularly good defense last night, or just the fact that not seemingly getting Ayoka Lee back is just too much of a hurdle to overcome to really beat the better teams in the country. West Virginia, I think, is just a little too limited offensively. I think we've seen that in past tournaments with them. They're one of those teams that none of the upper echelon teams really want to play, because on a single game situation, the way they play defense, the way they scrap and take the ball away, they're a difficult matchup. But over the course of a 6-game or a 4-game run to get to the Final Four, I don't know that they're consistent enough offensively to be able to do that. They could be one of those teams that knocks off somebody that you're not expecting, but then kind of falls flat in the next game. So I would lean TCU has the guard play. Certainly Baylor has good guard play, and that tends to get you a ways in the tournament. So I'm going to lean on those two teams as the best chance for the league to kind of break through and maybe get to Tampa.
I brought up a lot of teams, and none of that is like breaking news. A couple of others that are in that mix. NC State just beat Notre Dame in that dramatic double overtime game. There's also, of course, LSU lost to Texas. Who are your right now number one seeds? And can what happens in the next 2 weeks just validate that, or can somebody get bumped off that line?
I think someone could get bumped off. It's been interesting trying to kind of parse these because of some of the head-to-head games we talked about earlier. But right now my number ones are UCLA, Texas, South Carolina, and Notre Dame. And with USC and Connecticut just behind and that, and then LSU just a smidge behind that. And then NC State as your number 8 team.
Mm-hmm.
I think that USC can break in because they still have to play UCLA at least one more time, perhaps twice, depending on how the Big Ten tournament goes. The thing that I mentioned the head-to-head, the thing with that kind of has me wondering what the committee is going to do is you got a team like Notre Dame who just lost their last game, has 3 losses, but they have 3 wins against all these other teams we're talking about. They're undefeated against the other teams in the mix here. So how do you take a team like that off the one line? But then you look at the 3 losses, and one of them's to TCU, one of them's to Utah, which is a couple of Big 12 teams getting the better of Notre Dame back at the Cayman Islands in November, and then they didn't lose again until Sunday. But how the committee or the individual members look at that kind of the head-to-head situation, because you've got South Carolina's lost to UCLA, but South Carolina's beaten Texas. Texas has beaten South Carolina. South Carolina and Texas have both beaten LSU, which is why I kind of have LSU a little bit further behind the pack. USC's beat UCLA, and they beat UConn, but they also lost to Notre Dame. So you see what I'm saying here? It's a big mix. And Notre Dame is the one team, when you just take that collection of teams, that has emerged in those head-to-head matchups. So I'm curious as to where the committee views Notre Dame now and how they will view them on Selection Sunday, depending on how the next couple of weeks shake out. But I think we could have some movement, but I think the movement is likely going to be maybe a Notre Dame or a South Carolina falling off and maybe a UConn, although the problem with UConn is they don't have any resume building games the rest of the way. Creighton's the best team that they have perhaps left on their schedule, and that's a mid-seed type team. Nobody else in the Big East is even really sniffing the tournament. So UConn's going to have a tough time building anything further on their resume, and they have those losses to Notre Dame and USC. So USC is probably the team with the best chance because of opportunity. And in the Big Ten, not only are they playing UCLA, but they're also playing other resume quad 1, quad 2 type games the rest of the way.
Charlie, final thing for me, I was just curious, as somebody who covers the game, how much have you felt the wave of momentum of the last year and a half? Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, everything that's come with that, Paige Beckers, just all of the kind of spotlight that's been shown on women's basketball in particular. Has that been noticeable? Have you felt that to some degree? And just what's that been like to see the extra attention being paid to the game?
Well, it's been great. It definitely feel the extra eyeballs, the extra notoriety. I don't think we're going to be able to replicate last year in anything that happens this year. And we just don't have that same star power that Caitlin Clark brought to the table. Now, a year from now, 2 years from now, Juju Watkins could be that person. Right now, I think we don't really quite have that level of excitement and exuberance around the country, but the eyeballs are still there. The numbers are still good. The attention is still there. When you get a performance by Juju Watkins against UCLA in their last meeting, unfortunately it was on Peacock, so a lot of people maybe didn't get a chance to see it. But if anybody who did watch that game, that would be the propeller to kind of that next level of buzz, because that performance was otherworldly. And it's the kind of stuff that Caitlin Clark did last year. And if we can get more of that, then I think we will have a chance to maybe at least get in the same ballpark as all that excitement from a year ago.
UConn's, you mentioned they have Creighton next, and that's it in the Big East, but they beat the hell out of South Carolina. Is Don Staley's team just in one of those everybody, even if you're really, really good, you're going to have a funk? UConn just a bad matchup because they also, South Carolina lost, of course, to Texas, and we know Texas is really, really good. So what happened there, in your opinion?
Well, on paper, UConn's actually a good matchup for South Carolina, which made that game all that more mind-boggling. I was there in Columbia, and I believe at one point my chin did hit the gym floor because I was so shocked at what I was seeing. And because you look at a team like Texas, you say, okay, that's a matchup that can beat South Carolina. They're tough, they're physical inside, they've got size, they've actually got more size than South Carolina. They do a lot of the same things that South Carolina does, and if they could do them better on that particular day, then there's a good chance they're going to win the game. UConn doesn't have size, is not considered a physical team, but you know what? That day, UConn beat South Carolina every loose ball. They were the tougher team. They offensive rebounded like crazy. And the bottom line is they made a whole bunch of shots. Mm-hmm. And when UConn has shooters, and when when they're in that groove, they certainly can beat anyone. It's just that this year they haven't quite found it yet. What I'm curious, and this is the downside of the UConn playing in the Big East, I'm curious as if that was the day that they found it. That's the Gino Auriemma has been saying most of the year that he thinks this team will be at its best in March, and some of the pieces have been either on the sidelines with injuries or they haven't quite come together from a chemistry standpoint. But he sees it. I trust him. He's got a resume, so I trust what he says even about his own team. So he usually doesn't say things like this, but he said before that South Carolina game, I really think this is going to be a really good team in March, and then they went out and proved it against South Carolina. But what it scares me with South Carolina is that now they were beaten in 2 out of the 3 games in that sequence by teams with very contrasting styles. Normally there's one avenue to beat a South Carolina, and now we saw that there's at least 2, and that tells me that South Carolina isn't quite the same as they have been, maybe even earlier in the season.
You know, Charlie, we appreciate it. I know you got a lot of things you're juggling, but it seems to me, and I don't know if you would agree or not, it covered a lot of basketball. I went to school when I was at Stephen F. Austin. Sue Gunner was there, and they were a great program back in, again, I'm old enough back in the late 70s, early 80s when she eventually went to LSU. But to me, women's basketball had 4 to 5 teams a year, and it has expanded. And it seemed like we might have been covering the game that changed everything when Louisville beat Brittany Griner and Baylor in Oklahoma City in a regional tournament. And it seems like for the last 10 or 12 years since that time, you know, another team or 2 every year seems to rise up, and the commitment's better, the money's better, but it seemed like that's about the time when everyone was like, oh my God, because you just didn't have upsets like that in women's basketball.
No, you didn't, and we're seeing more of them. We still don't see them at the same level as the men's game, but the women's game is on a different timeline than the men's game. So I think that's important for people to remember. Is, you know, the women didn't have an NCAA tournament until 1981. Like the men started in 1939. So there's a big difference there. But we're able to witness what we're living right now is this evolution where, as you said, you know, you got 10, 15 years ago, you had 3 or 4 teams. Sometimes in some seasons in that range, you had one team. You clearly, there were those UConn teams. There was UConn and then everybody else. So there was South Carolina and then everybody else. Well, now we have this. We have Iowa do what it did over the course of the last couple of seasons with Clark. You've got USC and UCLA now at the upper echelon of the sport, whereas, you know, USC was in the very beginning of the timeline I'm talking about, but it hasn't really been that team. But in that time frame, you saw the rise of Mississippi State. You know, that same year you're talking about where Louisville beat Baylor. Cal also made that Final Four. So, you know, we see little examples of that where we get an added team here. We get a program if they get the right coach or they land the right recruit, they can be at the forefront of the game for a while, and that's good because I run into so many people over the years knowing what I do. And they'll say, "Oh, women's basketball, it's you know, UConn, right? You know, your job's easy. Just pick UConn and you're done, right?" And that hurt me a little bit for people to have that feeling. But they weren't entirely wrong. Well, now they'd be absolutely wrong, and that's nothing but great.
Charlie, thank you for what you do. Appreciate your time, and thanks for giving us the time.
You got it. Anytime, fellas.
Charlie Cream with us from ESPN Women's Basketball. And the nice win by Baylor had him scheduled for today. Glad we did. And we have seen a lot of changes in the last 10 or 12 years. And I know a lot of you that just don't care about women's basketball. You don't cover it. You don't like it. And that's fine. But it has picked up a tick ratings-wise and much more. No question with what Caitlin Clark did at Iowa and now into the future. When we come back, Craig Smoak and Off the Radar. Paul's Top 5 about an hour from now. And we still have Jerry Palm on the men's bracketology and who is going where as far as how many teams in the Big 12 make the tournament and how many of them have a chance to be a number 1 or a number 2 seed. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Oh, my God, I wish I could remember this. Somebody sent me a note, and it might have been Katie Rader, about a YouTube food-type expert that was doing a rating system on pizza from all of the brands that you grew up with or how old you are, and that he went through all of them. And I think I probably have tasted about as many pizza companies that I can imagine. I worked at Domino's back when I was in high school and early on in college, made some pretty good money running pizzas out to various places around Randolph Air Force Base. So I've tried all of them. But this video that Katie Rader sent me, this guy tested all of the pizza, and Marco's was his choice. Now, yours might be somebody else, but I sent that video to Bob Mock, who owns 5 stores in Waco. He goes, yeah, we love to promote that video. And all the pizza. I mean, pizza's hard to screw up. But Marco's Pizza, one of our sponsors, Bob Mock, with 5 locations in Waco, and the fastest growing pizza brand in America. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, taking a look at some headlines around the sports world, not just college football or even college sports related. A little bit of a reprieve, although today's been pretty much an off-the-radar type of thing, I feel like. I mean,
yeah, we had
the women's tournament's college-related, but still not something that we talk about with regularity, although Paul will have his 4-hour breakdown bracketology, I think, here in the next few weeks, right? On this, are you going to do on this channel, the women's basketball selection show breakdown?
I think we should launch our own channel for that.
Were you ill during that segment?
No, I set it out because I've not watched it at all this year.
This is my regular annual joke. I don't really care that much, but yes.
So I mean, I haven't watched it all that much. And I realized by sitting it out, I walked right into the joke and the criticism. It would be like,
well, that was coming anyways.
This would be like Richard Gere saying, "Listen, the gerbil thing is a lie," and then watching a gerbil just fly right out of his backside as he said it. But I know that I just didn't. I was not going to be able to speak eloquently with Charlie on that.
Well, I don't know how much I'll even ask Jerry Palm. We'll see how that goes. There's times we do that, but I do that with you in women's basketball anyway. So that was going to happen whether you hosted that segment or not. But that 4-hour bracketology breakdown, just be looking for that on the channels here in the next few weeks.
I learned a lot.
Well, that's good. That's good. Now you prepare yourself, and you can use that for the show and everything when you get into that. But no, in all seriousness. We will start off with the NFL, where they got the combine going on in Indianapolis. Nothing that's happened so far that's, lighting the world on fire. No record-breaking 40s and bench presses and things like that we'll all go gaga over at some point before the week is over with. But there has been, with everybody that's anybody in the NFL, all basically descending upon Indianapolis, plenty of news and headlines. For example, this is not my first story, but the Commanders have apparently let Jonathan Allen and his agent go and look at trade possibilities, as they would not mind losing all of the tag money that he's going to have on their books next year, just the fact that he didn't play in a lot of games. And so there's little whispers of things like that are coming out. So Jonathan Allen, if he can find a trade partner, he and his agent, the Commanders are willing to deal him. There's a lot of things like that. The Bengals obviously looking to pony up and pay all their big players is something that's being talked about. But the thing that I found most interesting, I think, has been the most interesting conversation that has ensued is regarding the Tush push.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. As everybody's in Indianapolis, the Tush push is under the microscope because the Green Bay Packers, by the way, it was very odd yesterday to see all these unnamed NFL team makes proposal to ban Tush push, and it was very easily available. It was the Green Bay Packers. They weren't trying to hide it. It wasn't like some huge secret. It was just the Packers. But for some reason, I guess the unnamed thing just...
Or whoever had the story first didn't know it.
Yeah.
And they were just like, well, I guess it,
Yeah, I guess people filled in the blanks and they didn't update the story or whatever, but it was pretty clear pretty quick. It's it's the Packers. So the Packers put together a proposal and confirmed their GM, Brian Gutekunst, that they are looking to ban the Tush push. Now, their president, Mark Murphy, had made this clear in a Q&A on their website earlier in the month that he thought the play was bad for the game. So now his GM and that franchise is going to go into the annual league meeting next month in Palm Beach, Florida, and put that in front of teams. They'll put that out there to be able to be voted upon. And the owners and everybody will take a look at whether or not they would look at changing this. Now, if the proposal were to go to a vote, which they could withdraw it, they don't have to follow through with it, but it is just next month, so I'd figure the Packers, especially since this has already been on their mind for a while, they're going to move forward with this. So when that does occur, if it does go to a vote, 24 of 32 owners would have to vote in favor to ban the Tush push. So 24 of 32. The play has been looked at by the competition committee previously, but they've never done anything about it. Obviously, it's been very beneficial to the current Super Bowl champion Eagles, and there are numbers that show you that this is very much an Eagles thing that some teams use sometimes, like the Buffalo Bills, but the percentages of how much it's used by Philadelphia versus everybody total in comparison is not even close. It's clearly the Eagles play, and they clearly benefit the most, and they clearly run it more than anybody. And so Nick Sirianni, their head coach, came out today and has some comments on it. I'm going to wait and hold back on those because I just want to get y'all's thoughts to start off with. How do you feel about the Tush push?
I don't care.
Okay.
It's not... Here's the thing.
You have a quarterback that can bench press this building with his legs. I mean, that doesn't hurt.
Like he could. So this is just about this is a rule just about the Eagles. If it was a play that everybody was doing and was causing a lot of injuries, which I don't think that it is, no more than anything else, then I would say, okay, you got to ban the tush push. But the thing is, it's not so much about the push from the guys in the back, which is what they're mad about. It's the fact that the guy who's always doing it has the strongest legs of anyone in the league, pound for pound. Mm-hmm. He's ridiculous. He can do it. Pat Mahomes can't do it. None of these guys can do it. So I don't know what we're doing here. Lamar Jackson's the best running quarterback in the league, right? He doesn't do this. Like, it's not about that. It's about his actual ability. And just because, hey, they're just trying to tug on Superman's cape a little bit here. I think it's dumb.
Josh Allen doesn't even need a push, but although he got stood up a couple of times.
He's also like 4 inches taller than Jalen Hurts.
You wonder about the safety of it. What Washington tried to do in the playoff game got to be comical, but really what else can you do than other to try to time that play and maybe hit him in the helmet and force him to get knocked silly for a second to fumble? I don't mind the play. The reason why people don't like it because they can't stop it.
They can't stop it, but I also do think it isn't not against the rules. Like,
well,
did we not grow up
It used to be against the
rules.
Right,
and so that's how we grew up, and you were not allowed. Now I know in college it eventually freed up, but it's called the tush push. It's not called you get great blocks in front of you.
No,
it's not called the Jalen Hurts is super strong. It's called the tush push because there is very much a wave of guys who are shoving you forward, and that to me was not football growing up at all. Now I know things change. Like, the NBA is wildly different than when it was the mid-'90s, and things change, and I can evolve and adapt. But I do think sometimes when I've seen them, I'm just going man, that's not the football I grew up on, and it's just been kind of hard to wrap my head around it, because to me it just sends off this alarm of that's illegal, but it's not. And so that's what they're weighing right now, is whether or not it should be. Since 2022, this was per the ESPN article, the Eagles have run that play, the tush push, 108 times, which is nearly twice as many as the next closest team, Buffalo,
there you go,
who did it 55 times. It's 92 times more than the third team that attempted it, which was Chicago, that did it 16 times. So they're not just doing it. They're doing it more than everybody combined. They're doing it nearly twice as much as just the second place team. But you see it goes from them doing this 108 times to 55 to then 16. And there's still 29 other teams left, so you can imagine that it's just a drip at that point. Some doing it probably once or twice, maybe 0 times. But it is very much a Philadelphia Eagles rule that they are trying to put in play.
How do you rule against it, though? How do you know?
You can't. That's the thing. You can't really.
Because
Washington did, but the way they did it got them penalized.
Yeah.
Because the only way to do it is to time it perfectly, and then they got in trouble because, you're interrupting the snap count. Well, it's what else are you supposed to do?
There's only one way, unless you have 5 Jonathan Allens in between the 2 tackle positions. I don't know how you penalize a team for doing it because it
wasn't allowed previously. You just call it what it was.
But you have a fullback and a tailback behind you. They're not allowed to come up and ram the back of the quarterback. Of course, if Hurts gets hurt one day, which I hope he doesn't, then he told you. I don't know how you rule on this. I'm good either way. If they deleted it, I'd be fine. If they don't, get better and stop it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine either way. It's not that important that they ban it, but it is very much a Philadelphia thing because it's not nearly as widely used, except for, Buffalo's enough to make it go, or make you go, okay, that's definitely a repertoire. However, Bills coach Sean McDermott, a member of the competition committee, said there's always been an injury risk with that play and that the techniques used have been potentially contrary to the health and safety of the players, but there's not really evidence to back that up just yet. One team that we know will vote against it, other than the Packers, obviously, will be the Falcons. Raheem Morris said on Tuesday, Falcons head coach, that he will vote to ban the play. It sounds like Buffalo could be persuaded because of McDermott's comments there. But Nick Sirianni, as you can imagine, is this isn't fair.
Yeah.
He does not like this idea at all. He says that they've practiced this too many times to count. It's not easy to pull off. There's different ways how they've practiced it, and compliments their ability to have explosive plays. He said that it's a little unfair. Some are trying to ban the play because they've had so much success with it, and that to call it an automatic play is, quote, a little bit insulting. He also said that as far as the health and safety, he said if you look at it, because they've also looked into that, there weren't a lot of injuries. He says, I think that's a little made up, to be honest. Now, the numbers will tell the truth, but I don't think there was many injuries with it this year. I can't remember one injury we had on that play, and we ran it more than everybody else. I'm protective of it because we've had success with it. I think the committee will do a good job at looking at everything, but he does find it a little bit insulting because they work so hard at it. So that was Nick Sirianni talking about it.
Remember the Bush push? Matt Leinart?
Yeah, that was
USC?
controversial because it technically was not. It was supposed to be it should have been a flag, right?
And they didn't. Yep.
But they did not call it. So, Paul, you have no issue with it whatsoever. You're fine with the
it's just
push.
It is what it is. Like, Jalen Hurts is going to retire in a decade, and then it's never going to happen again. It's going to be.
You wouldn't want Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels running that.
No,
play.
I mean they're like. I mean, of course, like Jaden Daniels has skinny legs. He's not gonna have it
You keep
as
him
effective
out of your mouth.
I mean, they did try it. It's just
it's just not. Yeah,
it's
it's
not
not
as
the same.
effective
Now,
as
look,
much.
if they start teaching Derrick Henry how to do that play, then I'll be like, yeah, you probably need to.
Well, why wouldn't you?
That's okay. That's it. So instead of banning it, just be like, oh, you're going to do it with him. Well, we're going to teach Derrick Henry how to take snaps under center on those situations. Or heck, Tyler Warren's coming to the league, or letting a guy like that do it. Yeah, then. Yeah, let big tight ends and guys like that do it, and then see all of a sudden if they're like, oh, yeah, then maybe we shouldn't do this. But yeah, I'm fine with it for right now.
All right, elsewhere, just make some quick comments here. The Baltimore Ravens have finally spoken publicly about the growing list of allegations against Hall of Fame level kicker Justin Tucker. General manager Eric DeCosta speaking to reporters. This is the first comments since the story initially came out about Tucker and accusations of inappropriate behaviors. Now I think 16 massage therapists, 8 different spas. This is very much Deshaun Watson 2.0 is what this all sounds like. DeCosta said the allegations are serious, concerning. The amount of allegations are serious and concerning. I think that we're fortunate that the league is doing an investigation. We'll wait as patiently as we can for as much information as we can, and we'll make our decisions based on that. So that was the first comments that we've gotten in regards to that. John Harbaugh, his head coach, said that the team is evaluating kickers in the upcoming draft, as you might imagine. And it is weird when you line up his year and like the time frame, you go, huh. He was really automatic there for a while, and now suddenly like things have gone a little sideways for him. So there is that kind of eyebrow raising that you can do. But DeCosta also said, I think the biggest thing we have to do is look at every single case differently. There are no absolutes. Again, they're waiting for as much information as possible. The league's been down to Baltimore. He's met with them, and they have other people in Baltimore, and they'll wait for the details. So, yeah, nothing new other than Baltimore just finally acknowledging what's been out there involving Justin Tucker.
Well, John McClain last Friday, and I mean, you guys were here, but I pre-recorded it. But, I asked him, is Justin Tucker's career over? And he said, yes. He said, this is different than Deshaun Watson, that we found out about Deshaun Watson because a bunch of people from the same city, all that have the same job, all got together and went to, and Tony Busby either put them together or they went to Tony Busby, however that happened. He said it's not that. This is people from all over the country, all over the place, that don't know each other, that have nothing to do with each other, that have never met each other, and they're all like, yeah, Justin Tucker did something appropriate. So, yeah, I think his career's over.
Inappropriate.
Oh, inappropriate.
Yeah.
Inappropriate.
But
so.
yeah, I think there's a good chance of that. So there's Baltimore commenting. Those are just some of the things that come out from Combine, days and the various league heads all being in the same place with all of these reporters. And the final thing I'll also take from the NFL headlines as Jason Peters, longtime offensive lineman, is retiring 21 seasons in the NFL. He's a Queen City, Texas native. He is not going to be leaving the NFL, however, as he will be joining the Seattle Seahawks front office, which was news broken by their GM, John Schneider, today in Indianapolis. He was with Seattle for a couple of years. He's been within the past couple of years and will now move on into the front office in a player development role under Vice President of Player Affairs, Mo Kelly, and he's being listed right now on their website as a veteran mentor. So that's what he will be doing there. He was undrafted, went on to play 21 seasons. He is going to be a Hall of Famer, came out of Arkansas and Queen City, Texas, as I mentioned. 9-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro, Pro Football Hall of Fame, All-Decade Team 2010s, Super Bowl champion with the Philadelphia Eagles, played in 233 regular season games for the Bills, Eagles, Bears, Cowboys, and Seahawks, and so on and so forth. I know you knew him way back, but a legend certainly in Texas football with the career he built out as a pro, and certainly in the NFL. He's going to be acknowledged in years to come. And man, what a career for Jason Peters. So it's one that's now finally wrapped up, and there you go.
You know, you see, I don't know if you ever watch Discovery, Animal Planet, whatever. You see certain animals that are just like old, but they are it. They're the dog, like a buffalo, or maybe just a. Let me tell you about Jason Peters. I did get to meet him, and I interviewed him, and he is a great story. He played with the Cowboys for like a year or two. Queen City High School, and I know this is maybe irrelevant, Queen City, in their history of football, has 8 winless seasons. So he's not coming out of a football factory. Like, it's not coming out of a place that produces a bunch of great high school football teams. They haven't won a district title in 25 years. They have more losing records than maybe most everybody else in the state of Texas. I always remember that about him. A giant of a man. He's playing offensive line in his 40s. I don't know if anybody other than like maybe those nose tackles that have played into the late 30s. He's a unbelievable player. I always enjoyed when I got a chance to visit with him. But is that it?
Yep, so there you go. There's a few things off the radar.
I was looking back at that. I didn't know if you'd have the Jason Peters note. I'm glad you did. But, I mean, Queen City High School. When you drive through that city, I think it's from Texarkana headed south, there's a sign entering that city where you might have Sealy, Texas, home of Eric Dickerson or whatever. Their sign is an X amount of times they've won the band championship.
Really?
So that's not a football town.
Yeah. Where do we go? Liberty Hill had this, and they had all these football titles.
Yep.
Right? They had these football titles, and then right below it, they had the spelling bee champ. That was like they dominated, like, not only will we kick your ass in football, but we will spell circles around you here at Liberty Hill.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but education and athletics coming together like they're supposed to there in Liberty Hill, Texas, I suppose.
It's a hell of a school, too. Man, they run that. Do they run that slot T, Garrett? Isn't that what they run, the wing T?
I think they changed coaches and don't run that anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that was the, you know what?
I think they still run it like a lot.
That was the game when you and I were doing China Spring.
Yep, down in Catalina or somewhere.
Yeah, and at the very first part of the game, the opening kickoff, a kid caught the kickoff at the 3-yard line, walked what is 10 feet backwards.
Yep.
And took a knee in the end zone.
Knee for a safety.
And it was a safety. And
we saw that at a game in Mejia one time, too, I think, or we did.
It was so crazy.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, we're going to visit with Jerry Palm. Craig, thank you very much. CBS Sports. Men's basketball bracketology. How many do the Big 8 get in? It looks like that number 8, half the league, is going to be a part of the tournament.
Because the Big 8 doesn't exist.
The Big 12, I meant. Not the Big 12, but the Big 16. When we come back, Jerry Palm, one of the best. He does it, bracketology, men's basketball. That's next on 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace went online. Go to Facebook and find out what their specials. And as I was walking in to HEB this past weekend, out front, crawfish. Did you know that, Garrett? It is time.
Yes, I did.
Live crawfish. And right now, at Waco Custom Marketplace, they are loading up on live crawfish. And the price is going to go down. Right now, 30-pound sacks of live crawfish, pre-orders available, $4 $4.45. You can call them and order it. Orders must be placed. They actually used to say Wednesday. By the end of the day, Wednesday, you can now order and place it by noon on Thursday and pick it up anytime after 4 o'clock on Friday or when you drop by there on Saturday. $4.45 a pound. Man, a crawfish boil, I've learned how to actually do one in a fake way in the oven. Seriously. And it's delicious with corn on the cob and the sausage, the crawfish, the potatoes, and so much more. Mushrooms if you want, and all of the seasoning. You can get live crawfish, biggins, at Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said there can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
Jerry Palm. My God, he does a great job. There he is with us, CBS Sports Bracketology. We've had Jerry on a lot in the years we've done this show, even before that on local radio. All right, Jerry, how many coaches, it's not quite that time, but how many coaches are banging up your cell phone asking you where they are right now?
I don't hear from a lot of coaches directly. I'll hear from, SIDs, ops managers, people like that. I don't really hear as much from the coaches unless I happen to be in the building. And then every once in a while I will. I used to hear from Scott. Scott Drew every once in a while, but it's been a while. And he hasn't really needed my help much lately because his team's been very good.
He might now. He might right now. Where do you have them? Well, you brought it up. They're sliding and they are not playing well.
Yeah, I've got them as a 9 currently, and they've got a big game with Cincinnati, and it's an even bigger game with Cincinnati, that is, because they're trying to crawl themselves onto the bracket and beating Baylor at home is almost going to be a requirement for Cincinnati to try and get their way in. But it's important, obviously, for Baylor, too. I don't think of Baylor as a bubble team yet, but there's still, a couple of weeks or so to go. So anything could happen. But I feel good about Baylor making the tournament. I don't know that I feel great that they're going to get a very good seed.
Jerry, the Big 12 has been surpassed, at least this season, by the SEC. You have 3 out of the 4 number 1 seeds coming out of that conference, and then Tennessee, a 2 seed right after it. Considering that Duke is going gangbusters right now, it's not really possible they would get all 4, is it?
Well, it's unlikely. You can't rule it out. But, yeah, Duke would have to step back for sure. And even then, Houston is chasing as well. So,
whoa. I think we just lost Jerry. We'll try to tap dance. We could do you have his number just in case we have to call him?
Yeah, let's just see.
Let's see if we can reignite that. Yeah. I have Jerry's, by the way, his bracketology right now as far as teams that are his top seeds: Alabama, Auburn. You got him?
No,
okay.
Hold on.
Okay. Alabama, Auburn, let's see. I believe it's Duke, and where am I missing the other one? Alabama, Auburn, Duke. Somebody from the SEC is just who am I forgetting about? Maybe Florida. Might be Florida, but we'll try to reestablish with Jerry.
Yeah, I just sent him a text. We'll see what happens. No, but I mean, it's like just to the question I just asked him. I mean, he's got Bama, Auburn, in Florida.
Yep.
And then Tennessee right outside of it. But like you said, Houston's lurking, and there's so like they're just fantastic. But there's 2 SEC teams that are 2 seeds right now, and A&M. Would be a 2 seed.
They're slipping though. They've had a couple back to back, and a lot of times people just look at a loss and they're like, "Oh my God, they lost. They're going to fall." More likely to fall in a ranking situation, the AP or the coaches poll, than you are actually in the bracket. There's a lot of other things that come into play as far as the quad wins that you have. We're going to go ahead and call him. Oh, you got him? Oh, there we go. Good to have him. Sorry about that, Jerry. Sorry about that. So Paul was asking you about the SEC with 3 number 1 seeds and the possibility you were talking about could they get 4, and you mentioned there's a couple of teams that will knock it on that door.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously Duke is one of them. I mean, they're in there, and unless something goes sideways with them, it's hard to imagine them not being a number 1 seed. But Tennessee is 5th overall. Houston is number 6, and so Houston really has a shot that they could possibly push to the 1 line as well. The SEC tournament is going to hand at least 3 of those 4 teams a loss.
Oh, that's just because that's exactly right.
Yeah. Just now occurred to me that was going to happen when you said it, Jerry. Kansas, you have down on the 6 line right now, and they're just in a bad way, as Kansas goes. They've got talent, but they don't have chemistry. What do you see as their reasonable ceiling for this year, and could they move up off of that, or do you feel they're more likely to go down before they get to the tournament?
I mean, they've got a schedule that gives them a chance to move up. I mean, they finished with Texas Tech at home, at Houston, home Arizona. I mean, that's 3 teams ahead of them in the bracket. If they win the home games and do something in the conference tournament, yeah, they have a chance to move up. But if they're not up to the task of those 3 games, they could be moving down to the middle of the bracket, which they could join teams like UConn and Gonzaga in the middle of the bracket and among the teams that we'd never really expect to see there.
How many times have you? Is that my mic?
Yeah, no, just go.
How many times have?
That might be your mic.
We're falling apart. How many times have you seen a team with a 14-2 quad 1 record like Auburn has right now?
Not very many. There's only been 3 teams that have more quad 1 wins in a season. in the 30 years I've been doing this, and 2 of those got them in years when the quadrants weren't called quadrants. They've always had 4 buckets for the games, but they didn't start calling them quadrants until they added home, road, neutral components to it and became too cumbersome to say it. But yeah, it's a remarkable season, a dominant regular season, and to do so in a conference as good as this one is makes it even better.
I want to ask you a question to go back. Somebody asked this in the on a direct message to me. We mentioned Scott and Baylor. I want to get to the rest of the Big 12, including Houston, et cetera, Arizona, Texas Tech. The loss to Colorado was bad. I mean, that's a team that had 1 conference win, and they lost to Colorado. How damaging was that loss, or does it really drop you much just because of what else you've already done?
It depends on where you are in the bracket. Are you talking about Baylor losing to Colorado?
Yeah,
you are, right?
Yeah.
Kansas didn't lose to Colorado.
Yeah.
They lost to Utah, but not Colorado. So it's a quad 2 loss. It's a road game. It's not the worst loss in the world. They've got 9 losses better than that, but it's not terrible. It's not a quad 3 loss. It's not like losing to Seton Hall in the Big East or anything like that. But it can hurt you. And when you are in the middle of the bracket where they are, you have more teams that look a lot alike, as opposed to at the top end or even the bottom end. But at the top end of the bracket, there's greater separation among those teams in terms of the quality of their resume. In the middle of the bracket, you all look the same. So if you take a loss like that, it hurts more because there are more teams that can jump you because you're so much alike. They also, though, a lot of those teams have losses like this one, which is why they're down in the middle of the bracket.
How much damage, if much at all, other than if you're trying to get in the tournament, Jerry, does a conference tournament loss hurt you?
It's just another loss. The committee does not give special credence to the conference tournaments. The thing that conference tournaments have is neutral site games. So it's not a home game or a road game. It's a neutral site. And the winner of the tournament is an automatic qualifier, and the committee definitely needs to know that. Otherwise, it's just another game, 1 of 33 or 4. And it has no special importance because it's being played late in the season or in a tournament.
Jerry Palm with us, CBS Sports, Bracketology with us on 365 Sports.
So, Jerry, as I look across your 68-team bracket here, the mid-majors are not as prevalent as they were because we've got these massive – I mean, the SEC right now is eating up a ton of spots that would normally go to them in another year, but these are bigger conferences now. Is this distressing for fans of schools of that type, and which one of the mid-majors do you think could make a legit run up to and wreck some of these Power 4 schools?
Well, do you consider St. Mary's and Gonzaga? I mean, you have to define mid-major for me because that is a nebulous term, and it doesn't mean the same thing to any 2 or 3 people that you ask.
Yeah, like the Big East doesn't mean a mid-major to me.
But the Big East is a major conference. There are 5 major conferences in basketball.
Yeah, Gonzaga, it's hard to say that about them because of who they've been. St. Mary's because of who they've been. And so, look, like someone like Drake, teams like that, is that mid-major to you?
I don't use the term because because you're either major or you're not. You're conference. So for me, and because mid-major conferences are offended at being called mid-major conferences. So I just
like Group of 5 in football. Sometimes they can get a little upset about that. Okay, all right, that's fair.
So I just leave it. But I like Drake. I actually like St. Mary's more than I do Gonzaga. Gonzaga's got a weird resume, which if you got a minute, we can talk about later. But VCU is currently leading the A-10. But Drake and VCU, teams like that, have to win their league to get in. They're not at-large teams. So, if those teams can win their league, great, because I think VCU is no fun to play because they come after you at both ends of the floor. They really go hard. Drake is just a really skilled team with a new coach and a bunch of guys he brought with him from his previous stop in Division II. And they have gelled, and they really play well. So, I think those two teams, if I'm going to stay away from the West Coast Conference and the Mountain West Conference, those two teams, I think, have got the best chance to surprise somebody.
Yeah, let's talk about the Zags, Jerry. They do have a very weird, they have a couple of quad one losses that were big margins. They have quad one wins. They're all over the place in a way Mark Few has never seen before.
Actually, they haven't lost any of their games by big margins. I don't even know if they have a double-digit loss. Looking real quick, they do not. Okay. They've got 8 of them, but none of them are double digits, and that's partly why their resume is so weird. In the predictive metrics, which are the ones that are heavily influenced by margin of victory, like the net and KenPom, they're top 15. Their average ranking is 11 in those 4 metrics. In the ones that don't care about margin of victory and just measure the quality of your resume, they're in the mid-40s. I don't remember ever seeing a team so disparate in these two groups of rankings. And if you look at their resume, it looks a lot more like the 40s. Their best wins are Baylor, which I have as a 9 seed, San Diego State, which I have as a 10, and Indiana, which I have among my last 4 in. That's not the kind of quality that merits a ranking in the teens or the 20s for that matter. So I have Gonzaga in the middle of the bracket. I actually have them on my bubble, although I think they're a win away from coming off of it. They're going to play at Santa Clara this week. And Santa Clara beat them at home, though. So that's, they've got 2 losses to teams that aren't going to make the tournament. And that's one of them. It's been a weird year for Gonzaga. Memphis is a little bit similar in the opposite way. The margin of victory metrics hate them, but the resume metrics love them. The margin isn't quite as different, but I think Memphis is a team that's going to be underseeded because of it.
Jerry, you know all about how they break this down, and there's a few questions other than just teams. Does losing a game in December any different than losing a game in February? Where a team was ranked then, does it matter? How does that all work out?
Okay, so the games are when they're played is irrelevant. What a team was ranked when the game was played is irrelevant. And if you're talking about the AP poll is never relevant. Current, former, whatever, they don't look at it.
Right.
So the polls that you see in the newspaper or on the internet are not criteria at all. So they've got 7 metrics. Those are criteria, but the AP poll and the coaches poll are not. And the date that the game was played, it's on the team sheet, but nobody cares when you played it.
Yeah, Jerry, it is weird to me that you would apply a top 25 metric like we've done for football, when now maximum it's been 12 teams in the playoffs. So it would make sense to know what, from 12 to 25, what is too deep of who could be the best 12 teams. But when you're talking about taking 68 teams, 25 is not representative of college basketball in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's 350-something teams,
yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, 364. Yeah, they keep adding them. They may have added another one last week. The other thing, though, is that the rankings, the net, is not used to pick the teams. I mean, it's not, in the college football playoff, they rank the teams and the top 12 are the playoff teams. Well, they don't use the net for that. The net is really sort of sorting games into buckets. And then, the net ranking is not always reflective of the quality of the team. We just discussed Gonzaga, for example. But, so they're looking at, and not all quad one wins are the same either. So they go in fine detail in analyzing everybody's schedule and results and what they've done. And there's a subjective part to it because everyone has their own opinion on these teams. And they have their own opinion on the merits of some of these metrics that they're using. So, it's much more of a subjective process guided by objective data than the college football playoff, which is just straight on, here's your rankings, 1 to 12, you're in.
All right, now I'm asking a question based on something I thought I read, and I can remember things pretty well as far as when I see them. Is there something to break? Is there something that you can throw darts at what Duke has done? They're hot. They're a number 1 seed. But did I see something where people were wondering about something about who they are? They lost to Kentucky. They lost to Kansas and Clemson. What would it be, if anything, or am I making that up?
Well, I think people question their schedule because the rest of their league is brutal. Clemson's good. Louisville's good. They'll be top half of the bracket teams. Everyone else, they may get one more team in, maybe two. Bottom of the bracket, maybe. And that, in fact, the fact that the rest of the league is so bad hurts Duke because they're not getting the competition they need. It hurts the teams outside of those three because they can't resume build unless they beat Duke. And North Carolina is 1-10 in quad one games. And that just screams we're not an NCAA tournament team. But they haven't had a quad one game for a long time. And they're not going to get one until the season finale against Duke. And if they don't win that one, they're not going to get another one until they get to Duke or maybe Clemson and Louisville in the tournament. I mean, it's just there's so few opportunities to resume build in that league. And that's probably what people are questioning about Duke is that you've been steamrolling this really bad league. And but by their standards, certainly. So that's probably what people are questioning. I don't know. They look pretty good to me.
Big 12. 8 teams, does that seem to be the number? What Cincinnati does, what Baylor does, does that seem to be the number you're talking about?
Yeah, BYU is part of that. Could still go one way or the other, and they're currently going in the right direction. They're on a hot streak. It's funny. I saw BYU at Cincinnati 2 weeks ago, and I don't think they've lost since. But they were awful in the second half of that game. So it's yeah. I mean, but BYU is I've got them as a 10. I've got Baylor as a 9. I've got those two teams, and then Cincinnati is trying to push their way on. They've done well recently too. So that Cincinnati-Baylor game is more important for Cincinnati than it is for Baylor, but it's important for Baylor too.
Jerry, if they expand this tournament to 76 or more, is there justification for that outside of them just trying to make more money?
You mean justification in terms of quality? No, you're going to add 8 teams worse than the ones we're talking about. Even worse than the ones we're talking about. And they're not expanding for VCU. They're not expanding for Drake. They're expanding for Syracuse or Xavier or, whatever. Those are the teams they're expanding for, and that's the problem I have with it. I'm, by the way, firmly, steadfastly in favor of going back to 64.
I could not agree with you more, Jerry. We had Brett Yormark on a year ago now, and I straight up told him, I said, he was going to an NCAA tournament game that night. I said, if you went seat to seat and asked everybody at the NCAA tournament, would you like more of this? All of them would say roundly no. It's very firm. No one asked for this.
Here's the thing.
Fan-wise.
Nobody's watching the first 4 now. Yeah. Unless you're involved or you're a sicko like me.
Yeah.
Your team's involved. But, you're going to add another, 8 games to that? And it's literally the casual fan wants to know when you get to 64 so they can fill out their bracket. All the rest of that is just superfluous. So I don't even know how much of a money grab it is, but there must be something to it because otherwise I don't think they'd be doing this.
Well, it's like we said before, and we know you got to go, but you have something that seems to be pretty perfect right now, and it was at 64, and then they do all this. And, yeah, the bracket, that frustrates people because I sometimes get confused and outthink myself on who's going to play that, play-in game or whatever. Speaking of that, Texas, they have nice wins, but, man, they are just not very good. They have a record of 16-11, but they're going to beat Kentucky and then lose badly to South Carolina. Are they a tournament team?
Well, they've got a problem. They're 2 games below 500 against the top 3 quadrants. Only one team like that has made it the NCAA tournament the 30 years I've been doing this, and nobody more than 2 games below. So they probably have to split their last 2, maybe win a game in the conference tournament, or their last 4, and win a game in the conference tournament, or maybe go 3-1 down the stretch. They have the most manageable schedule of the bubble teams in the SEC because they're playing 3 other bubble teams and Mississippi State on the road. So they've got a manageable schedule, but it's SEC schedule, so manageable is relative.
Jerry, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate your time as always.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jerry Palm, JP Palm, CBS. JP Palm CBS is his Twitter feed, and also CBS Sports Bracketology for men's basketball. Hope we answered a lot of questions. Big 8, God dang it, Big 12. No question that Houston's in, that Texas Tech is in, that Iowa State is in, who am I missing? Arizona is in. Those teams are all in. The question's going to be, and I know I may be forgetting somebody, is the Cincinnati, BYU, and then Baylor. And Baylor right now, as he said, looks like they're in. Kansas is in. TCU, it looks like they're probably in too. West Virginia's kind of like floating. But there we are, man. That's a pretty good core, though, with Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Kansas, despite how bad they've been. They've won a couple of games that are all against teams they should beat up on Oklahoma State, and they won big last night. They have enough of a deal where they have a head start. When we come back, the Hall of Famer, John McClain. This is 365 Sports.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses. When it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers, everybody, the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
It's Truck Month at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, drive home a 2025 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab or a Ram Lone Star Crew Cab, both with massive $14,000 off MSRP. Looking for unbeatable value? Drive home in a Ram 1500 Tradesman Quad Cab starting at just $35,995. Or upgrade to a Tradesman Crew Cab for only $37,995. These deals won't last long. Hurry into Allen Samuels today.
Come by. Let's be friends.
1, 2.
I'm in love with a man named Rudy. I'm okay with that. He knows exactly what I want. He keeps me coming back. He cooks breakfast, lunch, and dinner for me. Does the dishes too. I'm in love with a man named Rudy. Last name Barbecue. It sure is easy to fall in love with Rudy's tasty oak smoked barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones and financial advisor Cam Heathcott. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Hall of Famer John McClain with us, 365 Sports, and man, he's been busy man. John, outside of what you do and what we've always known of you as a Hall of Fame writer, and I know you're not writing as much, share everybody, you mentioned this before, but share again what you're doing with documentaries.
Well, I'm still doing my 11 weekly talk shows, TV appearances, and because, as you guys know, talking about sports is like stealing. And everybody does it, and I love it. But the writing part was hard. So I stopped writing for the first time since I was hired by Dave Campbell and Hollis Biddle to work at the Tribune-Herald going into my junior year at Baylor in 1973. So I could focus on these two documentaries. One's on the Phillips family, Bum, Wade, and West, the Vikings offensive coordinator. The other one that's become a labor of love is on the Prairie View Interscholastic League That was football, high school football in Texas before integration. And we're hoping to have it out in February of next year, which is the 60-year anniversary of the end of the PVIL when it merged with the UIL. But back for 50 years, they had a black championship and they had a white championship. And we talked to a lot of players like Mean Joe Green, Kenny Houston, Jerry Levias, Elmo Wright. We talked to historians, media people. We're driving, the four of us are driving to Lubbock next week in 2 SUVs to interview a 93-year-old head coach who won a PVIL championship with Corpus Christi in 1960, and he plays tennis 3 times a week. So we're interviewing a lot of people because we're hearing these incredible stories. And there have been books written about it, the PVIL, but we haven't found a documentary. And the stories we've been told, like Mean Joe Green playing at Temple Dunbar, Kenny Houston, Lufkin Dunbar, those stories make me mad, and I'm bitter, but they're not. And I'm thinking, well, if they're not bitter about the way they were treated and the racism that they went through, then I'm not going to worry about it. But we're trying to tell their story.
John, the tush push is the talk of the combine today, and whether it should be banned or not. What is your feeling on it?
I'll say this, Paul. Just because people can't stop it doesn't mean it shouldn't be banned. You know, there was a time when you only played man coverage in the NFL, and then people kept finding faster receivers and throwing touchdowns over their head. So they invented zone defenses, which changed the complexion of the passing game. So just because you can't stop something doesn't mean a rule should be put in. You know, do a better job. I think Green Bay comes across as a bunch of little weenies. You know, they can't stop it, so they want to go call their mommies and cry about it. Get the right people that help you stop it. Don't penalize the Eagles for perfecting it.
John, what's your opinion of the combine these days? I know you're not there like on the beat like you would have been for so many years, but just what kind of appeal, if any, does it still have to you?
Craig, the main appeal I got from going to the combine was getting to see all my friends for a week, especially at night when we were finished working. When I started going in '85, there was like 7 writers there, no broadcasters, a bunch of agents. We were hanging around in the lobby of a hotel, the Crown Plaza, and trying to grab players who we didn't know. We had a list of about 100. And so it's grown to hundreds, maybe a couple of thousand, you know, a miniature Radio Row compared to the Super Bowl. But you can't get any one-on-ones anymore. And plus so many of the top guys don't work out. And it's become a made-for-TV thing. And that's fine. I like watching it. I'll watch it. I'll read all the interviews. I'll watch all the interviews. And I still think it's entertaining. But I would think pro days and private workouts especially are better. The problem with a pro day, like, say, Shadur Sanders, his pro day is going to be orchestrated like a Broadway play. Rehearsed over and over and over. So when he goes out there, it's all going to be robotic. And of course, teams know that. But that's why I think private workouts in which you're telling that player, okay, I want you to throw this. What are you going to do in this situation? That works out so much better because you control it and not the player and his agent and his coach.
Never forget the RG3 Pro Day inside the indoor. ESPN and I think the NFL Network broadcast that day live from inside of it, and Mortensen was there among others. It was quite the show. I was reading this note, and I don't remember exactly, but it was from the Combine. It might have been from theathletic.com about measurements and how, like, there are certain measurements, like an offensive tackle, that you cannot or they do not want somebody with like a 32 7/8 inch reach. They want 34 or something. I mean, it's down to the eighth of an inch type of thing. But I guess history shows that works, right, John?
Well, the agents know all this, like they rehearse all the Wonderlic tests over and over for several years. and they know every drill. Guys, fitness gurus who work on nothing but what they're going to do at the combine, especially when it comes to speed. The strongest guys never play well in the NFL. It's always the guys, and usually not even the fastest guys are great. But, Xavier Worthy set the record. He got off to a good start with the Chiefs.
Yep.
Chris Johnson, the running back, had 2,000 yards with the Titans. But really, most of the time, the fastest and the strongest are not the ones that work out the best in the NFL. And I heard a story today on NFL radio about a quarterback whose hand size was being questioned. So he got a specialist that helped him stretch his fingers and his ligaments to make his hand a little bit bigger, because I remember so many times they say, well, his hand's not big enough. And what they're talking about is holding the ball, like when it's raining or snowing, things like that. But you hear about those things now, but how often during the season does a guy fumble and go, oh, I remember back at the combine, they said his hand was 9 1/4 instead of 9 3/4. It's not. And that's the thing. They pick a poor guy to death, paralysis by overanalysis. And boy, if you've got a problem, it'll, unlike the old days, because of social media, if you got a problem, an injury, and it doesn't even have to be true, word can get out. So like Eddie George, the Heisman Trophy winner, it got out that he needed shoulder surgery for an injury he had as a senior at Ohio State, and his stock went down, and the Oilers got him, and he was Offensive Rookie of the Year and rushed for over 10,000 yards. But there's so much bad information going around, but it's still interesting to keep up with it, just because the NFL and the draft are so fascinating.
John, because of the dearth of quarterbacks in this draft, do you think that you'll see some overreaching trade craziness for the teams that are desperate to get one, like, say, the Raiders or the Jets now?
Absolutely, Paul. Absolutely. All these guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. And I don't understand this thing about Matthew Stafford. Obviously wants big bucks at this later stage of his career. The Rams don't want to pay him what he wants, so they're letting him shop around, see if somebody else will give him the kind of money he wants. And presumably they'd make a trade for a quarterback who'll be 38. And I'm thinking anytime you make a deal and pay a lot of money for a quarterback that age, there was only one Tom Brady. And you're hoping you get Tom Brady or even Drew Brees, who played till he was 40. And I wonder what in the world the Rams are going to do if they get rid of Stafford, because remember in the playoffs, they played Philadelphia better than any team. And yet he must want so much. Sean McVay, who doesn't make a lot of mistakes, is willing to let him shop. It doesn't mean, they're hoping, I'm sure, no, he's not going to get an offer of $50 million. The best he's going to do with 40. Well, we can do 40. If for some reason Sam Darnold is not franchised with the Vikings, even though he had the bad last two games, there will be a bidding war for that guy. And I think his contract, we will all go, wow, because there's so many desperate teams.
From undrafted to a 21-year career, Jason Peters called it quits today. Will join the Seahawks front office. Anything stand out to you about him, and is he a guy that's looking at a Hall of Fame call in the future?
He played so long, Craig. It's like he seems like he's in his 50s, but he was a guy who trained all the time. Somebody got hurt 5 games in the season. Let's call Jason Peters, and he would come in and do a commendable job. And at one point he was great. And I'm guessing because of his durability, I don't think he'll be a first ballot. He'll certainly be worthy. Now, Zach Martin, I think, will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, depending on who else is eligible 5 years from now, if indeed he stays retired.
Yeah, Jason Peters, I mentioned this, like watching the Discovery or probably Animal Planet, some old, dominant animal that you just huge. I mean, a monstrous human being from Queen City, Texas. Anything else, Paul?
Nope.
Greg, anything else? John, thank you. Hey, good luck with the documentaries. Is this going to be like months from now, a year? How long does this take for all this to be put together?
We've been working on interviews for like 3 months, and we are hoping to come out in February, the next February, because it's the 60-year anniversary of the end of the PVIL, and it's Black History Month. It just seems like a natural time to do it.
Lufkin Dunbar, I think Texarkana Dunbar, you mentioned Temple Dunbar, and some of those players, great names that went on to be stars in not just college, but also in pro football. Thanks for doing what you're doing, John. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys. And remember, sick 'em.
That's John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist with us. That's pretty cool, working on the Phillips family of coaches. Bum Wade. Oh, my goodness, there's others. And then, of course, Wes, that's it. And then, of course, the PVIL. And I have a little bit of history of not covering the PVIL, but interviewing. We've had some of those names. Kenny Houston, a part of that, and some other names that have been, and Joe Green, of course, from just down the street, the highway, 25 to 30 miles from Temple Dunbar. All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com.
This is Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Forget the fees, just big savings. Click the link in the description to find out more.
Welcome to Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Ticket Club. Link in the description. Forget the fees. TicketClub.com. March Madness coming up. TicketClub.com. They will hook you up. ACC teams that will be better in 2025. Number 5. the most important one on this list, because it determines my sanity for the calendar year following. So right now, I'm not in a good spot, guys. FSU. Look, worst record in modern program history last year. So basic math tells you they'll be better. So I've given myself a wide berth here, and believe me, I'm a guy who needs a wide berth. But boom. Fat joke of the day. Anyhow, Thomas Castellanos comes in. He did quit on his team at Boston College, which upsets me. But we don't know all the factors involved. He seems to be enthusiastic about being back with Gus Malzahn. And if he quits on this team, his football career is over. So sometimes when they're holding on to the end of the very end of the rope, they hold on tighter. Squirrel White, Deuce Robinson come in at wide receiver. Much better. The entire offensive line replaced for the most part. Richie Leonard, the only starter from last year that comes back, and he did not play the majority of last year. They've got young running backs ready to go that should help the running team. Gus Malzahn steps in as offensive coordinator. Herb Handed, offensive line coach. New blood and new ideas along that side of the ball, not to mention Tony White brings his 3-3-5 over to Tallahassee from Nebraska, where he's been fantastic the last couple of years and where he was fantastic at Syracuse before that. That should pay dividends for the Seminoles, even though we'll see where they are in their growth phases. But this should be a team, bottom line, their worst years every year should be 8-4s or 9-3s. That's what they're paying for. That's what they're set up for. That's what they're paying Mike Norvell for. Yeah, you lost your quarterback. The next guy is not as experienced. This is a make or break year for Mike Norvell. And if he gets back to at least the baseline of 8-4, that will be fine. And maybe if things fall the right way, they can contend for a conference title. I'm not holding out hope with Clemson and SMU and others in the league, some of whom we'll talk about here. Number 4, Georgia Tech. Already a really good season last year and navigated it well in spite of a lot of injuries to Haynes King, who couldn't really throw the ball down the stretch. They beat Miami without him being able to throw. They only lost to Georgia Tech because of a really, really bad non-targeting call when Haynes King got targeted. Otherwise, that game's over, and Georgia may not even be in the college football playoff. This was a team who was affecting the playoff in many ways, all down the line from the beginning of the season and ruining Florida State's hopes and dreams right off the bat to the end of the season and putting a charge into Georgia. Haynes King is back. He's one of college football's best leaders and best football minds out on the field. He can do a lot of things. He's tough. He's gritty. The team's built around him. They rally around him. They've got a great coach in Brent Key. This team is going to keep getting better. Georgia Tech, I think, at least a game better than they were last year, if not more, and maybe in contention for that conference title. Number 3, Duke. There's only one reason I think this. They went out and Duke football put themselves at the forefront. They decided to do a little bit of what basketball does, and they spent some money. They went and got Darian Mensah, the quarterback from Tulane. Very good first season as their starter last year. He now comes to Duke and Manny Diaz, a defense that's really good, a quarterback that's improved, although they could have gotten by with Malik Murphy this year. But Darian Mensah steps in, an upgrade in the passing game over Malik Murphy, and someone who is an absolute gamer and will help them maybe close the gap. This is a team who, outside of Clemson and Florida State, has the third most 9-win seasons in this decade of the ACC teams. Pretty hard to believe, through 3 coaches as well, Cutcliffe, Elko, and now Manny Diaz. Number 2, Louisville. There's Jeff Brom back in the day. He's, of course, the head coach at Louisville. I think they've upgraded at quarterback from Tyler Shuck to Miller Moss. Jeff Brom's offensive acumen and coaching alone should help them score points. Their defense is always good. Maybe not great, but good. Miller Moss is a better player than Tyler Shuck. And he got to the ACC title game 2 years ago with Jack Plummer as his starting quarterback. This, with Miller Moss, I can see being a very similar thing. Can they get the kind of running game they got 2 years ago? Can they close out games better than they did this year? This past season in 2024. If those 2 questions are answered, and I think they will be, then Louisville will be better in contending in the ACC in 2025. And number 1, Pitt. Pitt was gangbusters until Eli Holstein got hurt. When Eli Holstein got hurt, they stopped winning games. Eli Holstein healthy for a whole year, conference championship contender. Now look, Clemson and SMU still exist, and they're not going anywhere. They'll be just as good as they were next year. It was hard for me to say better, but they will be just as good, at least in my opinion. Pitt, though, was a team who was going gangbusters and then hit the wall. I even left Syracuse off this list, although I have confidence about them as well. But Pitt hit the wall after Eli Holstein went out. If they solidify the depth that prevents him from being the end-all, be-all, then yes, that will help. And also, if he is healthy, you can see what he can do. He was one of the highest recruited quarterbacks in the country, originally committed to A&M, flipped to Alabama, and then, of course, Nick Saban leaves. He goes to Pitt. He's the starter there last year, was really good, and is only going to get better from here. Eli Holstein, healthy a whole year. Pitt, better than last year, and a contender in the ACC, and that's reason enough to do the gritty, because I said so. SMOAKY, please send us home.
Man, thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. You spelled my name right, at least part of it. Ross Dellinger, College Football Playoff Executive Director Rich Clark, saying historic data is needed to inform the decision on changing the 25 playoff format. There is no data.
It's a year.
It's been 1 year. There's no story. There's no 8 to 10 or 2014. Commissioners will meet again in March. Sankey and Petiti, according to Dellinger, did not talk when they walked out, which means maybe they didn't get their way.
Wow.
They're angry.
Historical data. Come on.
There's no.
It's a year.
Yep.
A
Absolutely.
year.
Yep.
1 year.
Also, again, they meet. Why would you not have had all of that information, whatever it is? We'll know more. Brandon Marcello will discuss it with us tomorrow. Does a great job of covering college football. For Craig Smoak and for Paul Catalina, Garrett Ross running the mothership, and Andrew is learning how to do it too. Man, I cannot wait for that day he has to run it, and no one's going to be here but me, Craig, and Andrew. And Emery, thank you very much. Working on 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 on the CW. If you can, before you say goodbye, hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't done either one of those. I'm David Smoak. Thank you for your time. Back again tomorrow, 365 Sports tonight at 3 o'clock.